morning's session is about first-hand experience of climate change in Greenland and reflection of climate change actions. So please welcome on stage Professor Elvis Au, adjunct professor, University of Hong Kong and Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Over to you, Professor Au.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk about something that is really close to my heart. What I'm going to share with you is not about textbook knowledge, nor numbers, nor graph. I'm going to share with you my personal direct experiences of the climate change in Greenland. So you may ask, why Greenland, right? I hope that at the end of my presentation, you appreciate that Greenland change will pose a real risk to every one of us and every business in the world, right? I was closely involved in climate and energy business since 2005. Over the past 17 years, I find that I read a lot of reports, like any one of you, because I was involved and closely I was in charge of natural gas policy, liquefied natural gas terminal, building energy legislation, waste-to-energy policies, and largest waste-to-energy project, and green finance, green bond, etc., etc. And there are a lot of numbers and figures. Although I've seen the photos of Hanwha-Chun's storm surge, like any one of you, but climate change seems to be very remote from me personally, despite I've read many reports. Those numbers really do not actually touch me a lot. So I decided in July this year, no matter how long I have to be quarantined, I decided to go to see the climate change myself, personally, directly. So that's why in early 2020, my wife and I decided we will go for a Greenland trip to experience things firsthand and also take some good pictures because we love photography. And we've seen a lot of reports in the past 2 years about the changes in Greenland. As Sean put it this morning, which I fully agree, we're facing a tsunami of change. In fact, in Greenland, there is indeed a tsunami of climate change happening. The NASA and many other reports have already pointed out to the historical melting of ice in Greenland, so much so that I think even polar bear cannot find his home in the future. So I decided with my wife that I'll go for a direct trip, in July. Our destination is Greenland. Why Greenland? Greenland is the second largest ice sheet in the world. The scientists have estimated if all the ice in Greenland melt today, the whole world would face a sea rise of 7.4 meters. 7.4 meters. Everyone in the world will be flooded up to the third floor. All the MTR will be flooded, no matter where you are, right? So it's a serious issue. So we want to go, and we want to go to the elusive place, the capital of Greenland. Greenland is about 2,160 times of Hong Kong, with only 57,000 people, less than as in Hong Kong. So very large, largely covered by ice, over 90% is ice, and a lot of, snow. So our journey was from 16 to 23 July, and we took the very primitive, aircraft from Iceland to Greenland. So Greenland is surprisingly quite a relatively poor place, as I find it, right? So we bought the plane. We saw from the airplane one of the very large glacier in Greenland. This is very famous. And you can see actually from the sky, there's a lot of iceberg coming out of the glacier already. Over the past few years, it has been found that glacier and ice sheets in Greenland have been melting historically, record-breaking melting, right? And the day we arrived was 16th of July, and the whole harbor was blocked by literally iceberg a few days before. Fortunately, the day we arrived, it will open up, that we can land it, we can reach the port, and coincidentally, without power planning, the day we were in Greenland coincided with the largest melting period in Greenland this year. In fact, the melting extent is already breaking record in the past few years. So incidentally, we saw actually a phenomenal event of the largest melting period in Greenland. Now, that is what I can see. The whole harbor was filled with very large iceberg mountain, not iceberg pieces. They're huge. That was in 17th of July. The highest day was on 18th, so in these 2 days we saw a lot of iceberg floating in harbor, right? And the thing I observed about climate change is that these icebergs were very huge, but they also move across the ocean very fast. On the left-hand side of the slide, you can see the two pictures, 16, 17, 2 days, still seeing a lot of ice mountain. On the third day, 18th of July, those mountains have disappeared from my room. Actually, my room actually can see those big icebergs. It means that the iceberg have been moving very fast, much faster than the official estimate of 46 meters per day. What does it mean? It means that the whole glacier and iceberg have been melting much more faster than anyone imagined. Anyone that can be recorded, in the textbook. So this is amazing to me, right? And on the 18th of July, not just that we saw these icebergs from the hotel on the land base. Actually, I joined a professional photography trip to go into the iceberg, into the ocean, to actually see things myself in close distance. So the boat journey started in the harbor on 18 July. 18 July was the historical day of the largest melting in Greenland this year. So you can see that coincides with the peak of the melting day. About 40% of Greenland was being melted. 40% means about 800 times of Hong Kong. So very large melting area, indeed. So we went to glacier, very close to the glacier. The red boat that I joined, so very close to the glacier. This is the edge of glacier. This is the point where the ice break into iceberg, right? One of the key concerns was that in Greenland, the calving point, the point where the ice broke into iceberg, was getting into the inland, right? Meaning a lot more ice broke out from the glacier than normal. So you can see that this glacier have cracks, have holes, which was quite phenomenal, meaning a lot more ice will be melted than expected, than usual. More crack means more ice, more iceberg. The darker the crack, the more easy it absorbs heat. It's a climate change phenomenon, right, that I study, but I think I saw it personally with the eyes. It's amazing, huge. Now, huge iceberg mountains on the sea, we sail very close to it. The red boat was the boat I was on board, right? So you can see the huge mountain. It's an iceberg mountain. But this iceberg mountain move across the ocean and melted into ice water, and they disappear very soon, right? These are very phenomenal. Of course, I think the iceberg sometimes could be quite beautiful, sculpture on the sea. These are pictures we took, right? All these pictures were taken by me and my wife. These are personal, direct pictures, not from anyone's sources. Right? So very impressive. In fact, they have a very important glacier, which is the World Heritage Site, right? It is it's the biggest glacier in Greenland. As I said, any change in Greenland will affect you and me immediately, right? In terms of sea level. So we hope that this World Heritage Glacier will remain and will not be disappear. And Greenland also have the very rich ecosystem, right? We also took some pictures. The ice mountains were beautiful in the sunrise, sunset. There was no nighttime, right? The sun set and rise immediately, so almost 24-hour daytime. So it's beautiful sunrise, sunset with the moon, right? With the beautiful iceberg, right? So for those who love scenery, who want to observe the climate change, it's time to go to Greenland to see things for yourself. Very impressive. This iceberg everywhere, with the sunrise, sunset. This picture I took. And very fortunately, we met the rainbow, right? It's very rare in the world. Even the professional photographers told us that they have never seen rainbow meeting iceberg in Greenland. So we were fortunate. They have also a very rich ecosystem, right? So these are the changes observed. So it's very beautiful on the one hand. It's also sometimes saddening to see the massive changes because of climate change, right? And there's a dilemma. We talked to a number of indigenous people, right? As to how they feel about climate changes. They told us that never in their life in Greenland they experience such a warm weather. Never, right? So they have to change their life. They wear a lot less. They have changed their own lifestyle. Of course, the change brings worry. They also bring some economic prosperity, like more tourism to come, and also the resources to be, harvested. So that's a dilemma for them and for many of us. And we left on 27th of July, say bye-bye to Greenland, but the melting continued unstopped, right? Record-breaking. So you can see that the ice melts and also getting increasing, but the record actually show that this year and the past 2 years have actually historical melting in Greenland. Well, it's a lot more worrying right now. There was a major report coming out by the time I came back to Hong Kong. There was a group of Denmark and Norway and Netherlands scientists who had done a lot of work in analyzing the melting in Greenland. It was the first time that the melting was fully quantified, to the extent that the result, I would say, were quite alarming, right? According to their prediction, Greenland alone will contribute 1/3 of the sea level rise in the world, right? And Greenland alone might actually cause sea level rise by 27 centimeters to 78 centimeters, right? It means a lot, including the also storm and the storm surge. This issue has caught the eyes of NASA and all the authorities around the world because of the historical melting, right? The experiences, I think, have actually struck many of scientists around the world because it's you would say, worse than expected, worse than predicted. So what's the message for Hong Kong, right? Interestingly, Hong Kong newspapers seldom report this world phenomenon, but exception, right? The Hong Kong 01 Main Power have reported quite widely this historical melting period in July, right? Saying that I think the level will rise by 27 centimeters to 78 centimeters. And from 15 to 17 July, actually, the 3 days melt a total of 18 billion tons of water, equivalent to fill 720 million Olympic swimming pool. Wow, it's huge, huge melting. Now, this is the IPCC prediction of the increasing seawater level by end of century. But I can tell you that with the latest finding, it's likely going to be worse than these predictions. Now, Greenland alone may already contribute 78 centimeters, right? So probably the curve will go beyond, probably will go before the dotted line, I would say, right? Beyond 1 meter. They will always say, what does it mean to Hong Kong? 1 meter, 7.7 meters. It means a lot. Even now, today, you can see these sort of storm surge pictures in Han Fa Chun. In future, you will see a lot more serious, even higher storm surge around Hong Kong coastal area. No exception. There are a lot of buildings, a lot of premises will face the flooding risk seriously. This is predict temperature increase by IPCC, 2 to 4 degrees, depending on whether or not we're going to add, right? And the temperature has also hit the record in Hong Kong since 1884, as reported by Hong Kong Observatory. And there are a lot of other effects. So the experience is real, and I think we need to do something about it. So I would say there's 3 reflections, I would say. The climate change issue is a kind of issue that crosses generation. It affects our children and our grandchildren. And also the second thing is that climate change action, natural action, mean business, real green growth, because the EU has already proposed an eco-design directive for all the future sustainable products, meaning that for those products that are not sustainable will be phased out or will be banned very soon. The third thing is that I think we are talking about a new and more healthy life. A lot of research have already indicated that our daily living has a lot of impact on global climate change, including our diet, according to the research by the Oxford University. Plant-based diets are a lot more healthier. And United Nations has already mentioned about the importance of a fundamental change in diet to really achieve the net zero carbon. So it means that all of us, citizens and business, will have a major role to play to really encourage a shift in the lifestyle towards a more healthier and low-carbon lifestyle. And the circularity gap report by Circular Economy have really identified the important collective effect of all these changes. And with that, there's hope that the net zero carbon target may be achieved. But certainly, it requires a very fundamental change in lifestyle, and we count on all of you to make that transition happen. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, next up we have a speaker joining us online, which is Ms. Sandy Song, Assistant Director, Hong Kong Observatory. She will share with us about the latest findings of climate change. Ms. Song, please.
I would like to apologize for not being here in person because I broke my foot last week. But thanks for giving me the opportunity to present the latest finding of climate change. I will present the findings mainly from the observations and also the climate projections. And most of the informations are obtained from the IPCC AR6 assessment report. This report was released last August last year, and it states clearly that human influence has warmed the climate. And it also states clear that the recent changes in the climate are widespread, rapid, and intensifying, and unprecedented in thousands of years. Recently, I still see some climate change deniers saying that human did not influence the climate change. If you meet someone like that, please help to rebut, because it is very clear. First, take a look at the greenhouse gas. It is unfortunate that the carbon dioxide emission has rebounded from the COVID pandemic. And in fact, the carbon dioxide concentration has reached record high in 2021. And under this greenhouse gas situation, the temperature continues to rise. And in fact, the global temperature has reached 1.1 degrees above that of pre-industrial level. That is very close to our Paris Agreement, the preferable target of 1.5 degrees Celsius. So unless there are rapid and significant emission reduction, global temperature is expected to exceed 2 degrees if we do not do anything about it. I think you have seen many news about the record high temperature in Europe over this year. And in fact, there are more than 1,000 deaths caused by extreme heat wave in Portugal. Apart from the high temperatures, the rainfall also increased over land areas. This is a map showing the Asia region. The frequency and intensity of heavy precipitation events have increased since 1950. And in fact, you may recall the severe flooding in China, Zhengzhou, and also Germany in 2021 due to record-breaking rainfall. But many people say that, heavier precipitation, that means we will not have more droughts. But in fact, that is wrong. Because the weather becomes more extreme, there are in fact more droughts all over the world. And you may recall the severe droughts in China, Europe, and US this year. So that will cause big impact to agriculture. Just now, the speaker also mentioned the Greenland ice melt. This is a graph showing that apart from Greenland, the Arctic sea ice also have a decreasing trend, and the retreat of glacier is also very prominent. In fact, the Greenland and Antarctic sea ice actually have accelerated. The reduction is also increased. So this, together with the warming of ocean, caused significant sea level rise. And in fact, the sea level rise is accelerating. And you can see that in recent years, the acceleration is rather prominent. So this will pose threat to coastal cities all over the world. Another observation is that due to the ocean warming, the tropical cyclones can be more intense. And in fact, the global proportion of major tropical cyclones has increased in the last 4 decades. And the average rainwaves precipitation associated with tropical cyclones have also increased. And it is expected that the proportion of most intense tropical cyclone will increase. That will increase the storm surge risk and also the heavy precipitation. So what is the situation of Hong Kong? Well, I can show you the chart that the temperature is rising rapidly and record-breaking from time to time. And the number of hot nights and very hot days increase very rapidly. And in fact, the number of hot nights have increased more than 42 times since the first 30 years of weather observation in Hong Kong. And if you take a look on the annual number of very hot days, hot night, and also the extreme high temperature days, you will see that the rising trend is rather alarming. Apart from high temperature, the rainfall, the annual rainfall in Hong Kong is also has an overall rising trend despite the strong variability in rainfall. For the short-term duration, for example, 1 hour record rainfall, the increase is very prominent. This will also increase the flood risk in Hong Kong. So what will be our future? IPCC AR6 report states have 5 designed emission scenarios. Basically, the very low emission to very high emission. We often hear people say about carbon neutrality by mid-century, and this is the mark. If we can achieve carbon neutrality globally by mid-century, we will be able to meet the very low emission scenario. If the emission is similar level, similar to that of today, it is about intermediate emission scenario. If we do business as usual, nothing to control the climate change, we will have very high emission scenarios. So beware of these 5 scenarios. And this is the temperature projection for the 5 scenarios. In the next 20 years, not very far ahead, the global temperature is expected to reach or exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius. So it will actually reach the Paris Agreement, the target 1.5 very soon. But if we can control and limit the carbon emission with great force and achieve global carbon neutrality by mid-century, there is still chance for us to limit the global warming to within 2 degrees by end century. That is the Paris Agreement target. However, if we do not control we have similar level as that of today, we will reach the Paris Agreement target 2 degrees by mid-century. So if we do not do anything, the temperature rise will be exceeding 4 degrees by end century. That will have a big impact to all the ecosystem. In fact, IPCC states clear that if the global warming reach 2 degrees or exceed 2 degrees, there will be a very big impact to the ecosystem, public health, and also the extreme weather all over the world, and that will have big impact. So we must achieve carbon neutrality as soon as possible. And this is the rainfall projection. You can see that apart from the lowest, very low emission scenario, the other scenario have a rapid rising trend of rainfall, the intensity and frequency. And also, if we do not do anything or we do business as usual, then the global warming of 4 degrees will increase the hot temperature extreme for nearly 40 times as compared to that of today. And the heavy precipitation and also the drought, the frequency will also increase. So there is an imminent need to control the carbon emissions. For the IPCC AR6, it provides more data for different users. It has grid point data, interactive partners, which provide the grid point data for projection for mid-century and end century for different regions. And if you take a look on the East Asian region, you will see that for global warming, actually will increase the average precipitation and also the consecutive dry days. That means the drought condition will increase. For Hong Kong, the temperature rise will be much higher if we have a very high emission gas emission scenario. And for the number of hot days and hot nights, you will see that for intermediate scenario, we will have almost 4 months of hot nights. And for the very high emission scenario, it will have almost 5 months of hot nights and nearly no winter by end century. And for the rainfall, of course, for very high emission scenario, the increase will be rather prominent, and also the upper bound is also very high. For the sea level, that is a major threat to coastal cities all over the world. The IPCC provides a projection tool for you to check the sea level rise projection. I take Hong Kong as an example. IPCC states clear that even if we can achieve carbon neutrality today, the sea level rise will continue. That is a bad news, but if we can control the carbon emission globally, we can slow down the sea level rise. So that is a very urgent need to control the carbon emission. IPCC AR6 also provides 2 new things about the sea level rise projection. One is that it provides the projection of 2150 projection that will facilitate the planning of long-term infrastructures. And the second one is it provides the low confidence but high impact scenario to indicate the deeply uncertain ice sheet process. And just let me explain a bit. This is about retreat of ground line of the ice cliff or ice sheet. However, the quantification of such process, and especially the onset time and also the impact on the sea level rise, is very uncertain. And that's why you can see that the free grade range, it can be very large, especially for the very high emission scenario. The range is very large because of the uncertainty. For the IPCC AR6, the 5 core emission scenario, this color bar shows that the likely range. It means the probability for the outcome to be within this likely range is at least 66%. So it is of a higher certainty because it contains the process of more confidence. So IPCC states clear that we need to consider different scenarios, including the low confidence, high impact scenario, especially take a risk-based approach in planning. For the tropical cyclone, both the intensity and also the proportion of very intense tropical cyclone in the Western North Pacific region will increase. And this will increase the storm surge risk and also the tropical induced wind waves, especially for coastal region. That means we will have more tropical cyclone threats together with the sea level rise. This is a thing that we need to bear in mind in mitigation and adaptation. So this is a summary of climate change impact for Hong Kong. We have a climate action plan, which covers mitigation, that means decarbonization, the adaptation, how to strengthen the infrastructure, and also the resilience, the contingency plan for extreme weather conditions. All these measures will be taken to protect our city from climate change impact. The important question is how far are we from the Paris Agreement? Based on the UN emission gap report, it is unfortunate that there is still a big gap from the 2 degrees Celsius Paris Agreement target. In fact, the emission gap report tells us that to get on track for the global warming to limit to 1.5 degrees, we have to reduce the carbon emission by 45% compared with the current policy in just 8 years. And they must continue to decline rapidly after 2030. That means we still have time to control the carbon emission, but the time window for us to action is getting shorter. So we need to act fast on carbon emission reduction. If we take a look on the emission gap report, actually, based on the information provided, it states that even if all countries update the pledge of carbon reduction under Paris Agreement, the so-called unconditional national determined contribution, NDC. Even if all countries can achieve this target, the global warming by end century will still likely be higher than the projected warming under the low and very low emission scenarios. That means unless there is rapid, immediate, and large-scale reduction of carbon globally, these two scenarios, the low and very low emission scenario, is apparently less likely as compared with the other scenarios. So we really need to act fast to control the climate change. I just want to quote the Secretary General during the COP27. We are going on the highway to climate hell with our foot on the accelerator. Our planet is still in emergency room. We are getting dangerously close to the point of no return. Humanity has a choice, cooperate or perish. So there is an imminent need and we need to act fast. And the climate we experience in the future depends on our decision now. So let's work together. Thank you for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, up next we have a panel discussion on TCFD and climate risk modeling. Please put your hands together for our moderator, Dr. William Yu, founder and CEO of World Green Organization, as well as our panelists, Professor John Shi, Director, Otto Poon Charitable Foundation Smart Cities Research Institute, Polytechnic University of Hong Kong, who will be joining us online, and Mr. Frank Wong, founder and CEO, Participatory Professional Services Limited, and Managing Director, Prudent Professional Services Limited. Mr. Oliver Zhang, FSR and partner, Ernst & Young Global Limited, who will be joining us online, and Professor Johnny Chan, Principal Climate Specialist, Europe and Emeritus Professor, City University of Hong Kong, will be joining this panel discussion later on. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause to our guests on stage and for the panel discussion. Thank you.
Very warm welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. So we have Mr. Zhang from Ernst & Young, and Professor Shi, John from PolyU, and Frank here. So I don't know whether you have heard about the sharing from Professor Elvis Au, his first-hand experience in Greenland. I would say worsening situation in melting glacier. Yes, please, Professor. Also, very shocking experience, scary scenery that we have to accept the reality instead to replace our denial of, oh, it's not too bad, okay, we still have time. And based on the scientific sharing, the findings, especially based on AR6 IPCC, thanks very much, Ms. Song from Hong Kong Observatory, to talk about all these factual, findings. It's really shocking. I mean, we heard at the start of the COVID, we experienced a 7% of drop in the global greenhouse gas emission. But then it rebounds, and another record high, record-breaking emissions in 2021. So should we do something? So what would be the future outlook, especially in terms of climate risk? What kind of climate risk we are going to experience? And more importantly, what will be the impact that we are going to experience on our life, on our health, on our asset, and also on our living, our lifestyle, many others. So for this section, definitely we will talk about some very sophisticated modeling, a kind of projection for the future climate impact. But what does that mean for us? What are the financial implications? Okay, so to get started, I think I will invite Professor Johnny Chen to share about the current climate risks, especially do we have any scientific research done to quantify all these climate risks? What types of climate risks we are going to face? Heat wave, flooding, or any other types of climate impact?
Thank you, William. Apologies for being late a little bit. Anyway, so thank you for inviting me to this important meeting. And I think the important thing about climate change and what's been going on in the international community is that last year we have published the assessment report 6, which is a leap forward from AR5, which was published in 2014. So the main thing is that in terms of the projections for the future, we know that compared with AR5, we know that there is a lot more hazard that will become more frequent. So as an example is that, of course, the temperature, we all know that the number of extreme heat events will increase in the future. And also the number of heavy rain events also will increase. And at the same time, the number of drought events will also increase. So that's a very important point because obviously water is an essential part for everybody, all living things on Earth. So the possibility of having a higher chance of drought is actually very important. Now, that's for the heat and the rain. But then, of course, we all know about tropical cyclones and typhoons that hit our area. And all the studies actually have pointed out that, okay, the number of typhoons might actually decrease. However, the intensity, that means how strong the typhoons are, actually will become, typhoons will actually become more intense. So while the frequency of typhoons may be decreasing, the intensity of these typhoons will actually be increasing. And in fact, many of the studies also have shown that for our region, East Asia, from Japan all the way to Vietnam, we actually can expect more typhoons with a higher intensity that will make landfall along this coast. We have seen very many intense typhoons in recent years, including the Typhoon Hato and Typhoon Mangkhut that hit us. So that's a very alarming thing that we need to think about. So in terms of finance, we said, okay, well, so what? How does that affect us as investors or as property owners or as developers and so on? So you need to realize that all these climate impacts, and they're not single climate impact, they can become compound impacts, right? So for example, if you have a typhoon, you'll have strong winds, you're going to have heavy rain, and you're going to have higher sea levels, storm surge. All of those will therefore affect the assets that people have. And the assets are not only for developers or property owners, but it's also for a lot of shopkeepers or even those who are in the retail business. So for example, if you think about this, that if the typhoons keep coming, then what you have is that the logistics, the supply chain will be broken. And so if the supply chain is broken, then you will have problems with your goods being supplied to you and things like that. So the problem with many people is that they don't know how the climate change will impact on their business. And that's what we need to start really thinking seriously, learn more seriously about how different climate impact will affect our daily lives, from food. I mentioned about the increase in chance of drought. So the food supply, water supply, and electricity, and all these will affect our daily lives. So we need to be really aware of what really is going on and what might happen in the next 20 to 30 years. So maybe I'll stop here and then we can discuss further later.
So the frequency of cyclone might decrease, but the intensity, the power might be more significant than before.
Yes, yes.
Oh, so I think with all this increasing water temperature, warmer ocean temperature,
Exactly.
will further fill up the power of the typhoon.
Right. The other thing that's important that many people have overlooked is the size of our cities. Our cities have been growing, right? You think about the Pearl River Delta. 30 years ago, it was just isolated tall buildings, right? Maybe in Hong Kong, and maybe a little bit in Shenzhen and Guangzhou. But now, if you look at the Pearl River Delta, it's completely covered with buildings. And urbanization actually has been shown to be a big contributor towards the heavy rain in the area. So the frequency of heavy rain, we're not talking about typhoons now, just heavy rain itself. The frequency of heavy rain in all cities, mega cities, not just in the Pearl River. People have done studies on the Yangtze River Delta, in the Seoul area. You remember that this year, Seoul, the Gangnam area in Seoul has actually a very big flood, and then also in Indonesia and so on. So all these big city clusters have experienced an increase in the frequency of heavy rain. So we need to also think about that we, as people living in cities, can expect more of these heavy rain events.
So when you're talking about the urbanization that lead to higher precipitation, then I start to think about the flooding issue. Maybe I hand over the time to Professor C. John, you can talk about, you have built some flooding modeling, maybe a 3D one. So what kind of parameters you need to gather, and how do you see the future situation in terms of flooding?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. May I share with my view? My background is geographic information science and remote sensing. So currently working on smart city. So let me talk about that issue from my professional background. So basically, I think from a monitoring perspective, we use the satellite, especially based on the past 20 or 30 years of satellite, series of satellite that I was monitoring what's being changed of the flooding areas and also the change of the damage in the period. So that's from a global point of view, not only for one city scale, but from global scale, that will have a picture about the change of those, say, flooding areas. Number two is based on the three-dimensional GIS and modeling. and a simulation model of flooding. Then we can study those buildings being flooded if there's a certain level of flood come to, say, for example, Hong Kong. So that's are the things we're doing. So that's called flooding risk analysis. So that's the research development. So based on that, we need to first build a three-dimensional model. So based on our laser scanning technology and three-dimensional modeling technology like photogrammetry and remote sensing, then we build a 3D models, both for buildings and terrains. So number two is we need to import those rainfall and water area and water level, and through those flooding in the past years, then those data need to be input to the model. Then we can do the prediction and the simulation and what kind of level of flooding or areas being covered, which buildings will be flooded, and then based on that, we estimate the risk of each of those buildings. So that's the current technology we're developing, and hopefully that can contribute to this study, global change, global climate change, and from the real risk of flooding risk assessment and analysis point of view. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, thank you. Maybe another question I want to ask is maybe to Ernst & Young, because you have globally you have many different corporate customers. Do they really care about all these potential risks, especially when we talk about flooding? That might cause a damage or economic loss to the properties, to different assets. So do they really care about this? When they come to EY, do they see for any different types of solutions or analysis? You need to, you are mute.
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Yu. So, yeah, first of all, thank you for inviting me as one of the panelists. So, just a quick introduction of myself. So, my name is Oliver, and I'm partner of financial service risk management in EY Hong Kong. And at the same time, I'm also the climate risk solution leader in EY APAC. So, recently, we've been engaging with a lot of banks on the climate risk stress testing, as well as compliance with the HKMA's supervisory policy manual. And the name is the climate risk management. So in terms for the impact of climate risk to the banking asset, I think that actually has a lot of, I would say there are a lot of impacts. So first of all, it's just been mentioned, it's the physical risk. So which means the floodings, the natural disasters, they would have a fundamental impact on the asset values, as well as the productivity of the corporates. So then we can see there will be impact on the capital expenditures, and also the impact on the profitability. But at the same time, I think so beyond the physical risk, beyond those natural hazards, so there are also other things that are affecting the companies. So for example, if there is for example, those transition risk. So in general, so I would say all the members, all the signing members for signing countries for the Paris Agreement. So they all have a pledge on how to contain the emission, the CO2 emissions or greenhouse gas emissions. So in order to do that, they will raise the carbon price in order to reduce the further emissions. So that actually have a fundamental impact to the companies also. So for example, companies need to invest additional capital expenditures to purchase new facilities, and also the companies need to bear additional costs from emitting the CO2s, the greenhouse gas. So that would have a very comprehensive result on the corporates. So also that means also there will be a lot of a lot of impacts, different impacts to the bank's loans, especially the loans that banks actually lended to those companies. So what we do in banks is actually using different types of models. So it's on one side of things, we rely on those natural hazards or those climate models, which provides us with the intensity and how should I say, the frequency and the intensity of the natural disasters. And also we rely on certain climate models to produce for example, the carbon prices, and also the capital expenditure scheme from different industries. So in banks, what we do is we try to study, we try to analyze the transition pathways for different sectors. For example, for power generations, they would there's a clear transition pathways for the power generations to become a green power generation companies. For example, for oil and gas sectors, for iron and steel sectors. So they all have very different pathways of eventually transition to low carbon emitting companies. So what we do is first of all to analyze those transition pathways, and then try to build up models, try to understand what is the impact at the company level. So what is the impact to their productivity? What is the impact to their cost? What is the impact to their capital expenditures? What is the impact to the overall financials, and try to build up those models to understand the comprehensive impact. And then after that, we'll try to rebuild the entire corporate balance sheet, and then that can be fitting to the bank's existing, for example, the internal rating-based models on rating or the ratings. Try to get the stressed ratings for those companies, and then banks can really assess the final impact to their investments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zhang. Thanks for bringing up the topic of TCFD, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, which covered two major risks. Physical risks, we talk about all these heat wave, flooding, super typhoon. And for transition risk, Mr. Zhang has already mentioned about the future carbon tax or the increase in energy efficiency standard that leads to increasing operational costs for our equipment and for our different infrastructure setting. All these are transition risks, and even that include market risk and reputational risk. So what we can see, to manage all these risks, not only important to issuers, especially they are required to have this kind of disclosure on or before 2025, required by the Hong Kong Stock Exchange and SFC. More importantly is, when will all this impact come? Is it too early to estimate all this type of risks? Or we only need to disclose as a kind of compliance to fed the regulator off? Or we really need to do something to understand the real impact to our property, to our real estate? So Frank, based on your experience, you have encountered different types of engineering projects, will all these kind of risk estimation factor into your projects, and will that incur additional costs for your clients, and are they ready to understand more about this kind of impact?
Thank you, William. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for asking me to come for this sharing. Through my entire life, I work on various projects, government projects and private projects. In my earliest time, I work on government projects mostly. And in the government projects, the assessment is actually quite robust. Basically, we are talking about when we are doing a flooding analysis, we are talking about drainage master plans, the East Kowloon drainage master plan, the West Kowloon master plan. It's so robust that if we use the statistics from observatory, then we forecast it, and then we know exactly which area will be flooded. It's easy to tell because it's you all using about the spot height and whatever, and then we just stuff it in the model. Easy to tell from a technical perspective. When we work on the project a little bit more, we come across some clients of mine. They are investment manager. Then it comes to another expertise of mine, urban planning. Urban planning means a use, a location, and a supply chain to actually make that land use happen and develop it. I mean, those are very important. But then, really different, in a very different perspective, this would actually boil down to the investor decision. It is actually the investor's responsibility to actually look at the risk inside. For every investment, investor will actually look at the risk. Climate risk. Climate risk, are we actually work on the climate risk on this? Say, for example, flooding. I'll take a particular example. There is an investor of mine trying to work on a data center. For data center, the first thing we need to look at is the power supplies that our colleague EY has spoke about earlier. And then we actually need to see if there's any risk, like for example, if there are road spill over or if there's another kind of explosive source that could be identified in the hazardous assessment. Those are very important. However, when it comes to a data space location where it was subject to prone to flood risk, and if that is the area that's the only government will allow the data center to be developed there, what should we do? What an investor do, and what the government should do to actually help facilitate this kind of decision making. All right. So but to be honest, if you identify the risk, if you have the risk identified, the other things that you would do is to do the mitigation measures. You have to propose mitigation measures in your climate risk model, and the measures will come with a cost. Okay, whether these costs you spend on this kind of particular project would outweigh or would basically help reduce the risk while increasing the investment opportunities. All right? This is something that the effectiveness of that mitigation measures that we should calculate, like in the future. This is not extremely difficult. Instead, in our industry so far, from all across of our professionals, we have, Hong Kong have the ability to really quantify this thing out. And I do hope that like in the future, if we could do like really, if you could actually help promote this kind of thinking, I think all the investors and even the general public deserve this kind of the information. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's true. So whenever we have in our future project, we should consider this aspect and how we can incorporate these kind of measures as a kind of risk management, coupled with the mitigation measures, as a whole for our kind. So follow up on this, I would like to ask Professor Chen. We have data, the macro data, maybe. Then we need to do a downscaling process and transfer it to a location-specific analysis. As said, now we have engineering projects over there. We need to do the diagnosis, and then after the body check, we know what kind of medicine or what kind of mitigation measure we need. And at least to have an understanding of the impact level. But from a company perspective, they may have a cluster of buildings, quite fragmented, located in different locations. So how we should start to do this exercise? a kind of evaluation exercise to identify the most vulnerable one, or we need to do an entire analysis? It might be too costly for a company to get started. What's your view?
Very good question. Actually, the basic thing to do is obviously to look at the company's entire portfolio and then try to at least qualitatively look at the most vulnerable assets, right? So that's not too difficult because many of the IPCC projections will give you some kind of idea of what that might be. However, once you have, so that's what you can look at the entire portfolio and even whether it's in, but of course, in different, if the company has assets in different locations, then you will need to look at the different cities as to what the vulnerabilities are. And once you identify that, then you will need to really, like what you're saying, I think that the word is downscale, right? So the global model projections will have a resolution of maybe about, the best will be probably about 100 kilometers. So it's not even a dot for Hong Kong. So therefore, if you want to look at location-specific assets, then you will need to zoom in using various techniques and whether they're statistical or some kind of sophisticated calculations to zoom in the location-specific. And that's the second part which you need to do. And then if you have identified a certain asset as being critical, then you will need to go even deeper because as Frank mentioned, that flooding is a good example. For a specific asset, you need to look at not only how much rain there will be, because how much rain comes down doesn't mean that the entire asset will be flooded, right? So if the asset, for example, is on a slope, then obviously the upper part will be okay. The bottom part will be flooded more. The second thing, of course, is to look at the city's drainage system. We need to look at whether the drainage system is able to drain away the heavy rain. If there's enough drainage, then you don't need to worry about it. But if the drainage is not sufficient for the future, not for today, so you need to look at what the future rain potential is and whether the existing or drainage system is able to drain away the rainwater. So that's number two. Now, I'll give you an example. And then, of course, the third one is that especially for underground structures, car parks, data centers, and that's very important. So we all know a few years ago we had Typhoon Hato that hit Hong Kong, and then the storm surge associated with the Hato actually went to Hang Fa Tsuen and then flooded the car park in one of the buildings, and then lots of cars were damaged. Now, this brings up a very important point is that about finance, because I was told that after this incident, if you live in Hang Fa Tsuen and you want to insure your car, no insurance company will want to insure your car, because they said if I will have to pay you every time there's a typhoon, your car may be flooded. So I don't want to accept I don't want to sell insurance to you. Okay, so until the property management in Hang Fa Tsuen put up floodgates at the entrance of the car park, then the car owners are able to buy car insurance. So this is one example of how climate impacts will need to be taken into consideration in all these mitigation measures. And also, you need to be location specific, because if your car park is subject to this type of flooding, then obviously you need to do something about this, right? So you need to know whether how vulnerable your structure is, based on climate projections, all the way to the drainage infrastructure that's present in your neighborhood, so that you can get a very reasonable projection of what might happen in the future. So that's the type of exercise that needs to be done in order to give a good projection of what might happen in the future. And that's very important for new buildings. If you design a new building now, the new building obviously should last for 50 years, let's say. So what's happening in the next 50 years? How would climate change impact on your property, on your asset? And that will be very important to take into consideration.
Yeah, true, very true. So Professor Chen has brought up an important concept. I would say now the climate impact, all this disaster, is no longer an environmental issue. It actually will lead to a series of financial impact.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, when you talk about the damage of all this property, that affects the collateral value, causing problem in mortgage loan. And then on the financial side, you know, all these financial institutions is going to face the credit risk, even the possibility of default, all this. And you mentioned about insurance. That will lead to the underwriting risk for insurance company, whether they need to do a compensation or they need to, you know, to pay a higher premium to protect the properties, or even they can't find an insurance to cover. Okay, Professor Shi, because we are running out of time, I have a quick question. The car park incident is a good case. For flooding measurement, we may focus on the surrounding external area of the properties of that object. But are there any measurement that we can do, how they impact inside the premises? Any internal measurement?
Okay, so one of the technology is three-dimensional laser scanning technology. In the past years, we developed three-dimensional laser scanning technology. So it's a laser equipment embedded on sort of a backpack. So people just carry that backpack, and then to measure three-dimensional the space of either on the underground car parking, or underground basement of a building, or even other part of the building as possible. So the accuracy can reach to centimeter level. I think it's enough to estimate the potential risk of the area being flooded. So it's most important for the elevation of the building and also dimension of the building. So I think that's the technology in the future can be used to measure the location and the location specific risk assessment. So I think a laser scanning technology, yes.
Yep.
Sure.
By means of technology, we can do both external and internal measurement. Okay, Mr. Zhang, also a quick question, expecting a short answer. Okay, how deep, how in-depth we should carry out all this analysis for client in their TCFD reporting? Do we really need to quantify all these risks? You know, it seems a very complicated process.
Yes, thanks for this question. Yeah, I think that's an important question. I think for now, I think definitely the regulators or the industry only expect the quantitative analysis, because it would allow them to do more analysis for their own usages. For example, on the loan pricing line. So one definitely don't want a single qualitative assessment because otherwise will not be able to price it correctly. So I think for climate risk, I think definitely at this level, at this moment, the industry. I think the industry practice will be able to quantify, for example, the impact on the credit risk, the impact on the market risk, or the impact on the operational risk. But then for some of the other risks, for example, the liquidity risk, legal risk, all these things, which the industry still don't have a quantitative measures to understand the impact. But having to say that the industry is I think it's evolving. So I think sooner or later there will be quantitative measures to understand the impact from climate risk to all these types of risks.
Thank you. So we need to get started anyway. And step by step, to step up our effort to get a more comprehensive kind of measurement. Okay, final question. Any good advice, Frank, you can give to the clients on the aspect?
Yeah, I think, yes, we are actually at the stage of qualitative assessment for some kind of the events. We have to boil down, I think, to quantitative assessment, and then we have to have a price tag. We need to have a price tag. Then people will know where they are and they know where they are heading to.
Okay, great. I think we should have another session to continue to discuss. But anyway, I leave this to next year. I will invite you all again for next conference, okay, to go in depth about this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joining us next is another online speaker. We have Professor Kong Ying, Director, Core PI of Low Carbon Economy and Financial Risk Analysis Lab, and Faculty Director of Entrepreneur Education Center, Tsinghua Berkeley, Shenzhen Institute. So please welcome Professor Kong Ying online.
And to share one of our research and related to the low carbon city. And I will share my PPT. 1 minute. I will do okay. So this is one of our research in Tsinghua University. And thank you for the organizer and organize this wonderful meeting. And our research actually is focused on low carbon city evaluation. And possible is we already know, and mainland China is follow on the government the policy, and we have a pilot program we call the low carbon city, and as well as low carbon city treating system. So therefore, our research basically is to fit this requirement for the government. And as my report is include the background, the key issue of low carbon city evaluation, and we just a short call LCC, and the low carbon development research. And we know is actually with more than half humanity actually now is living in the cities. Right? There is a growing recognition of the role city play in contributing to and combating climate changes. And actually, the UN have the one research indicate, and the 50 largest cities in the world and collective the carbon emission, and actually is the quantity just follow and China and the United States. So that is the World Bank have the research in there. And low carbon practice has been widely actually it's conducted at city level. And this is the one diagram and indicate some cities actually is low carbon goals, and in almost is from 1990 to 2070. So from the diagram is we can see include United States cities and include England and Japan and Germany and other cities. So which means is actually is global wide is the government very much focus on the cities as a low carbon development target. In mainland China, as the government also is carry on the policy for the we call is China's is low carbon pilot cities, and so far there are 3 batch of the low carbon city we call pilot cities, and the first batch is a start from 2010 that include 7 provinces and 6 cities. However, I have to indicate here, and like Tianjin, Beijing, Shanghai, and Chongqing we treated as a province. So it's the first batch. We have Guangdong, Shanghai, Liaoning, Hubei, Yunnan, Tianjin, and Chongqing. And the cities include Shenzhen, Xiamen, and Nanchang, Guiyang, Baoding, and Hangzhou. And very interesting actually in the Bay Area. And both Guangdong and Shenzhen is as included in the low carbon city pilot cities. And second patch is a start from 2012. In the provincial level, that is include 3 provincial that include Beijing, Shanghai, and Hainan, and 26 cities. The third batch and the start from 2017 that include 45 cities. So that is basically is our Chinese the government practice, and those numbers come from National Development and Reform Commission, and that is the case. And what is the key issue of LCC evaluation? Right? So, and because we are very much interested at the city level, the low carbon development, and we try to build up the evaluation system to evaluate how low carbon development level in the city level, and what kind of issue we try to study here is some issues. The first issue is comprehensive understanding of LCC and what is LCC, right? And the second one is standard LCC indicator framework. And the third one is the challenge for low carbon city research. And this basically is because the carbon emission is not only graphic issue, but also it's a space issue, right? So it's a national level, or city level. And in terms of the low carbon city definition, and this do involve several series, and they include the theory of sustainable development theory, the theory of low carbon economy, environmental Kuznets hypothesis, and ecological footprint theory. And here is some the early research on the low carbon city definition. And I'm not going to introduce by one by one, but the concept of the low carbon city actually is getting broader and broader. And the latest concept of a low carbon city and indicate a low carbon city is a sustainable urbanization approach that centers on certain and anthropogenic carbon footprint of cities by means of minimize or abolishing the urbanization of energy sources from a fossil issue. So basically, is energy is one concern. And the similar concept to low carbon city also include what we sometimes from media, and we can see the sustainable city, like the Malmö, Sweden, Malmö, like eco city, like Tianjin eco city, and like the city of Copenhagen. And also we have the concept of carbon neutral city, like Melbourne, Australia. And also we have a zero carbon city, and so on. And for our research, and we concern and several framework, and we call the categories. So 6 common primary categories, and that's were found across almost all the international indicator system. So which include energy and climate, air quality, waste, transportation, land use, and urban form. And the last one is economic well-being. And low carbon city indicator framework is also the second one is we think about indicators collections. And common indicators and include carbon intensity, energy intensity, and building energy uses, and so on. Actually, we have quite more indicators. And when we build up the evaluation system, we try to have fewer indicators to reduce data collection and analysis cost. And the key common criteria include relevance, data availability, and comparability. And the third question, and when we build up the system, evaluation system, and we consider the weighting and aggregating. Indicators may be weighted overtly and implicitly, and or equally depends on the indicator system. And the first point is benchmark criteria. So as indicator performance can be based on presetting goals and derived from target value and the thresholds or relevant value that rely on comparison to the past performance. And relative values are used most commonly in international indicator systems, and the benchmark value are used when policy target and health-based standard is available. And indicator system developed within mainland China is because we haven't include our study to the Hong Kong and Macau. So it's basically we have some limitations. And the first limitation is data requirements have not matched well with China's statistical system policy targets. So this is the first limitation. The second limitation, indicators fail to sufficiently inform government decisions. And the third one is too many indicators for so widespread application, and the last one like composite scoring or ranking. So that is some limitations here. And what we will do, and here we list some factors included in our study, and we call LCC indicator system. And the first one is economy. Definitely, is this evaluation system will be include economy. The second one is industry structure. The third one is energy. And the fourth one is environment. The last one is low carbon capacity and management. And the economy, we concern the carbon emission, resource consumption, economic development. Industry structure, we concern on the foundation, optimization, innovation. And energy is we concern clean energy, energy efficiency, and also is green transportation. Environment, we concern living environment, blue sky days, and water, and solid waste. And the last one is management. Okay. And based on this is we go to the second level, second tier of criteria. So for example, the carbon emission, and we should collect the data of the carbon intensity, CO2 emission per capita, and the unit length area of carbon dioxide emission, and so on. And for the resource consumption, and we basically collect data is a primary energy consumption per capita, and so on. Why we consider per capita? Because China has a huge population, right? So therefore, and the city, between city, among the city, they have a large difference, and based on the population. So therefore, and we try to using data, the per capita data, and to make a comparison. And industry structure, I'm not going to talk too much. And also the energy, and we have a detailed indicator, and environment, we have a detailed indicator. And the last one is the management. And this is the difficult part, how we measure the management. So it's we thinking maybe we're going to collect some data like environmental spending as a share of a city budget, and the city renewable energy strategy, and the city climate change resilience. Something like this we try to get. And as a low carbon development research, so far there is the big difference between urban research and the national level research. So this is the one the big difference. And why? Because in terms of boundary, as a countryside, we have a clear economic, energy emission, and so far. And the city, no, not so clear. And energy statistic basis, and in the country level, energy and balance sheet, and good proof reading basis. But in the city level, is a difficult data foundations. So that is some challenge for us. And also in the macro impact factor and identification, like city side, we have a countryside, we have total population. So that is easy. But for the city side, and we have a permanent population, floating population, and so on. This is the typical phenomenon in China. Like Zhuhai, we have 1.63 million, we call permanent residents, but we have a 5 million floating population. Like Shenzhen, we have 12 million permanent residents, but daily we have more than 20 million what we call floating population that are based on mobile phone signalings. So that is another difficulty for us. And the challenge facing urban low carbon city development research and include the energy and the emission accounting. That is based on consumption and the production basis perspective. And the scenario study, uncertainty in the future growing trend of energy service demand, like a population, that's right. And for example, Zhuhai do have a plan in what we call is a 14 economic development plan is going to is 5 million, that's right. And the population, permanent resident go to 5 million. So that which means in the next 5 years is Zhuhai will growing as dramatic. And the last one is association of urban low carbon actions with national carbon emission targets. And what we have done is so far is we have done in the country level research on China medium and long-term low carbon development target to go and realization path. Is we have done some research here in the city level. Is we just finished as the development goals and the path of a low carbon city construction in Zhuhai city, and that is from 2017 to 2035. And in department level is we have done some research industry, construction, transportation, electricity, the low carbon development. And others, and we did PICFAS, transportation department, energy, consumption, accounting method, and so on. So those are what we have done and we plan to do. And basically speaking, we thinking it's a low carbon development strategy is a national-wide policy in China. And President Xi Jinping is emphasize is a sustainable development as a national target. So therefore, I think it's the research, our research and study is will make some contribution in these fields. Thank you so much.
glad to welcome back Professor John Shi, Director, Otto Poon Charitable Foundation, Smart Cities Research Institute, Polytechnic University of Hong Kong, joining us online on the topic of flooding model. Over to you, Professor Shi, please.
Oh, yes, please. Thank you. My topic is flooding and risk analysis based on the satellite remote sensing, three-dimensional GIS, and laser scanning. So I have a 15 minutes, right? Okay. So first of all, flooding analysis using 3D GIS. So this is the one of the technology and I would like to present you. First of all, we need to build the three-dimensional city model. This is one of the example we use in our university as an example, the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. Then I will say how we can simulate the flooding based on that three-dimensional model for urban area here. Here is example. So we needed to import the 3D city model. And then we also need to have the data on the rise of the, so this is flooding area and how that's buildings be flooded. And we needed to know the rate of rising of the water and the extension of the area or minimum or maximum level of the water flooding the water area. So those are the information we need. And then based on 3D model and simulation model, then we can simulate which buildings will be flooded in terms of a certain level of the flood. So that's our example. Let me show you again here. So that's the areas being flooded, right? We also, perhaps even in Hong Kong, we also have a nature terrain area. Also, we have less risk because there are less buildings there, but we also have a model to simulate, say, for example, we give certain areas potentially we considered to be flooded. And then we have the model and to study what are the water level in terms of studying of flooding. So that's for nature area. So those are the two examples based on terrain. That's particularly do that. First one is based on building model. Second one is based on terrain and do analysis. So that's the example again here. The areas will be interesting and perhaps being potentially flooded. Then we insert the parameters that will get at the flooding areas. Yeah. So damage analysis, we particularly interesting how what's the level of the damage in case of a certain level of flooding. So first of all, we're interested in the certain level of the buildings being flooded. Then we have a building models, particular house or flat, and the spatial distribution of flood depths, then and velocity. Then we have that area. Furthermore, perhaps we would like to go to further details for those which room and which part of the rooms are being damaged and flooded. So that's based on the, we needed to have a certain level of the detail model of a city later on, or of a particular building. So then later on, we'll introduce the models we're using for search detail analysis, damage of a particular room and particular part of the room being damaged. So one question you may ask, how did you build the 3D building models? In the last panel discussion, I mentioned about that one of the technology is mobile mapping system. Let me show you an example. Here's one of the mobile mapping system developed by our team. So this is just like a backpack, but we have laser sensors, cameras, receivers, so BeiDou and GPS signals, and inertial systems, computers, and controls in that bag. So you just carry that bag and walking here along the area, then you can hear. So this is the model finally be built. It's called a digital twin data model. Now how did it came? So first we need to carry that backpack walking in the area of city. Then we have a laser point, and also that's a trajectory of that person move along the city. And then based on that laser point, we call it point cloud. Then we use a software and then we can build that 3D city model, very detailed. Okay, so that's it how it comes. This is one example I can show you. This is a very goes to very detailed, either exterior, and then we can also go to interior. This is one of the buildings in Hong Kong as an example that we built as a model. And for the details, either go to the rooms and inside that building and outside. This is photorealistic, so you can see very clearly which part of building the stores, the entrance being flooded or not later on based on that. You can go to inside also. They're so similar as people. So this is the one today we use that to develop metaverse or digital twin. We're seen as models. So this is a exterior. Let me show you goes to the interior. We mentioned in the panel discussion about what about this is Sanfachuan car parking places. This is not a Sanfachuan, but it's in PortU car parking spaces. Then we carry that back and move in that area. Then we scan the laser scanner point cloud. And then we can build the 3D underground, the models. There's 3 floors here. This is a laser scanner. And then based on that, we can even see those cars there. And then perhaps you don't want those cars being flooded. And there, we can have those detailed models, cars, building floors, and also the whole buildings. So those are the models we built based on the laser scanning. So that forms the foundation of a 3D digital city that can be used for flooding analysis. I'll stop here for that part. Another is then after we're building that model, we need to have a platform, which is a software platform to hold all data. We call that a smart city platform. So with that platform, we can form all different things. Like here we have a laser pointer cloud, 3D mesh model, semantic model, basic map, digital terrain. This is very important for the flooding analysis, and this is the rectifying the satellite image and also social media data. So we have all that data put into one software. It's called a smart city platform here. And then we have a very different level of details. That's LOD1, that's 2D, that's 3D, 3D more details. And then let's go to the inside the room. Just before I show you here for the terrain analysis, you do need to have a detailed indoor model, and then you will see which part of the building be flooded and the water will be potential flooding damage. So then how we can do that, because when we form those 3D models, it goes to the indoor. And then so we have a different part of the buildings, then it can help. And then we have underground utilities. You mentioned the drainage system, and that's very important. And also can be coped with this system. Next is a risk analysis. Here I show you one risk analysis, is onset risk prediction of COVID. So in the whole Hong Kong, we subdivided the city into 291 small areas. It's called a TPU. So we can predict the risk of COVID for each of that risk area. And we can also predict analysis for each building. Those reddish one means higher risk, medium, lower, and general. So we can give the risk for different level. So this is the use COVID prediction as example. Now we needed to change that model to the flooding prediction analysis later, and then shows risk of different buildings and even areas using the similar tools of 3D model, but the backbone prediction model is quite different. So that's the what you will see later on in the future of flooding analysis and the visualization, and based on this, the 3D model. Second technology I will share with you is remote sensing technology. Then we look at the flooding from more global and large area perspective view. So see, this is the multi-resolution satellite image we can have. Then that's the resolution 10 meter, 20 meter, and even large. So that's sort of the different data. That's the Landsat data from States TM. That's and that's the Landsat with other acquired time. Then based on different time, we can do the analysis and what are this flooding area in different time period. And this is a traditional method for normalize different water index and do an analysis, and we do the finally the morphological processing, and then do the analysis and the prediction flooding area. And this is the flooding data, and we do the advantage of this method for using optical satellite image, like I showed you before, for flooding analysis which is convenient for visual interpretation, and with higher resolution, signal to noise ratio is clear, but also with limitation. What about those flooding sessions? We have very much thick cloud in the sky, so it's blocked the satellite sensors to look on the surface. So that's the cloud cover. So that's one of the issue. In particularly, if you still remember Zhengzhou flood, then we see a lot of cloud there. Then if you just use that's called optical satellite image, it doesn't help much. So another sensor we're going to use is SAR image, so synthetic aperture radar satellite. So those are the satellite. Then that's with different principle for looking from sky to the Earth's surface and to monitor the potential of flooding. So that's the extension from the this work goes to the SAR image analysis. This is the Zhengzhou flooding area. That's data from the SAR data. So you can see this is less being blocked because of cloud weather. So it can penetrate the cloud. So the advantage of using that as SAR satellite image is less effect by cloud. So that's our research going on here. Let me show you one of the example is Dongting Lake. We use satellite image. This is our paper. If you're interested, this is the monitoring spatial temperature change of Dongting Lake wetland. Basically, it's a flooding area we're seeing here, based on the past 20 years of satellite to monitor how those wetlands been changed. So basically, that's the area Dongting Lake, very large, one of the largest domestic lake in China. That's the whole area. And then this is the methodology, our methodology from data processing, spatial temperature fusion, and classification. And then we'll have final result from original satellite image, and then final to have the wetland analysis. So this is the result of the land cover map of the city. Particularly look at the water. That's the water area we're interested in the 2010 and 2020. It's a 20 years for time, and in Dongting Lake area, that how those water area be changed. So this is the data. We have the area with maximum water. You know, with the season, raining season, we have a higher level of water, and so small area of the Dongting Lake being covered by water area, blue area. but the same location, if you see that's the water with minimum water level, so that's the water area, right? So we see how that's changed. Water areas being changed through seasons and through years of time. So finally, we look at this. This is the result of the wetland. Particularly, we look at this one. This is the frequency of a map of water. So this is water area. We studied the flooding. We're more interested in how those areas being covered by water and whether there's potential flooding in particular year. So this is the analysis, and based on the last 20 years, then this is the areas covered by water area. You can see there's certain pattern, which is quite regularly through the years. So in certain level and certain months, we have a more wetland cover area, and certain months we have less. So the conclusion is that since 21, the change of wetland area in Dunling Lake have generally remained regular and stable. So there's no much problem in this area. Also in some sections we have lower part and a little bit high that section, but in general, we analysis past 20 years is relatively stable. I mean the wetland area or area covered by water stable. So there's no too much problem there. So this is what I would like to share with you. Basically, I share with you is flooding risk analysis based on the technology we have. Number one is the three-dimensional GIS. Number two is laser scanning technology. We based on that laser scanning to build a 3D model. Number three is satellite image and analysis. Then we analysis the flooding area or wetland area. So by integrating those three technology, satellite image, three-dimensional GIS, laser scanning, then we conduct risk analysis for urban and non-urban areas. With this, I conclude my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, moving on, we will have our next panel discussion about ESG and sustainability development. So first, please welcome our moderator, Dr. Bruce Zhong, Director and City Advisory Leader, ARUB, onto the stage. Meanwhile, I would also like to welcome our panelists, Ms. Christina Howe, CEO, Champion REIT, onto the stage, as well as Mr. Russell Yao, founder, OneSource Limited. And last but not least, Mr. Johnny Yu, advisor to Chairman, Henderson Land Development Company Limited. Please give a warm round of applause to our guests on stage. And I'll pass the time over to you, Dr. Zhong.
Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining this section on ESG and sustainable development. So my name is Bruce Zhong. I'm very honored to invite our three panelists today who come from really a variety of background. So we have in alphabetical order, Ms. Christina Howe, Chief Executive Officer. From Champion REIT, we have Mr. Johnny Yi, advisor to Chairman, Henderson Land Development Company Limited, and Mr. Russell Yao, founder of OneSource Limited. Now, in the coming 40 minutes, our key objectives in this panel is to think about two key issues, right? What actions relating to ESG are being undertaken by corporates? And secondly, what are the key challenges companies are facing and how we can overcome collectively? Now, for all participants, please think along with us and feel free to leave your comments and or post your questions in the chat box. First of all, I would like to let you further introduce yourself. Can you each explain your role on ESG in your company and why you think it's necessary for you to address these issues? Could we start by Christina first?
Thanks. Champion REIT is a REIT host having a basket of portfolio in terms of retail, in terms of real estate asset. So as the chairperson of a sustainability working group, I oversee the sustainability goal setting, implementation, evaluation of our ESG target, as well as reporting to the board and also align our target and performances. In terms of why we have to tackle ESG, because first of all, since we manage and we own the buildings, and the buildings itself, we got carbon emissions, we use up energy, we produce waste, okay, we have water consumptions that is heavily related to our environment. Secondly, on social part, since we got our tenants, stakeholders, customers, communities, employees, so on the social part, we also had to react proactively on that. And on governance, since we are a licensed corporation, a listed company, and we demand ourselves to perform high governance standards, risk management, etc. So in terms of all these three ESG aspects, I think these should be well taken care of, especially as a CEO, to monitor all these and do the reporting. Thank you.
It's very encouraging to hear from a CEO, Christina, introduce the overall strategy of ESG. Now, Russell, over to you. Could you briefly introduce further yourself, your company, as well as your role in ESG?
Thank you. These 2 days, I have seen many solutions towards ESG, and my company takes a different approach. I would call it a bottom-up approach. We are addressing the consumers, which is you and me. At our one source, we're trying to enabling consumers and companies to be able to understand the product safety. And we have compiled and conveyed all the safety, product safety informations from well-known organizations into a set of easy-to-understand indexes for customers to understand. And that's our social part of engagement. Within our indexes, we also include an environmental friendliness index, which is how we address the environmental part, allow consumers to make informed decisions when they are acquiring goods. Last but not least, many businesses use our platform to refine their product formulas to remove or reduce the harmful and otherwise controversial chemicals from their programs. And as of today, we have quite a few of personal product manufacturers leveraging our system to improve their products. And in short, one source trying to assist consumers to detox for
healthier lifestyle and also help companies in detoxing for a more sustainable business.
Okay, thank you. Just for your information, basically we have two of our guests from the built environment sector. So Christina and Johnny. And Russell basically is in another sector, is from health sector. This is quite interesting and quite a dynamic panel. So, all right, over to you, Johnny. From Henderson perspective, what's your role and also your perspective on ESG?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. This is Johnny Yu from Henderson Land, advisor to chairman. And at the same time, one of my key tasks at Henderson Land is to lead the sustainability initiatives, internally, and just to make sure that, although we have the sustainability committee, which is led by our chairman, Dr. Martin Lee, and together, within the committee, we have other senior managers from different divisions to run the initiatives. But at the same time, we need a working group, which is led by me, to coordinate with different departments, to make sure that we incorporate our sustainability strategies effectively into our day-to-day business, i.e., what are we trying to achieve, to address. Of course, we are trying to address first climate issue. Second one is how do we, promote health and wellness. Green is not the only thing that we look at. We also have to think about health and wellness nowadays, especially tenants are getting more and more demanding. And thirdly, how do we promote a sustainable city, in both Hong Kong and China, and also in the rest of the regions. And in order to do this, of course, we have a strategy in place, which is very easy to remember, as I mentioned again and again every time I attend different seminars. The strategy is very easy to remember, which is summarized in one word, which is called GIVE, G-I-V-E. G is obviously for green, green for the planet. We're trying to reduce our environmental impact to the surrounding areas. And I is for innovation. We have to promote the use of property technology. And then V, value for people, and endeavor for community. I think these are the four very easy to remember strategies that we have been implementing into our day-to-day projects. If you were to look at our commercial projects, our residential projects, you can see that GIVE is being implemented in all our projects. So this is what we are trying to achieve. And the reason why we do it is, Christina probably has mentioned, coming from the property sector, a lot of carbon emissions come from electricity generation, and buildings account for 90% of the usage. And as a responsible property developer and property investment manager, we have to, do something to save the world.
It's quite inspiring to hear the word GIVE, right?
GIVE, yes.
Right? For all your projects. So we see the importance being driven by CEO level as well as a mastermind, as Johnny, steering his company from both top and also bottom up to coordinate ESG-related works. We will hear more from Johnny later. Now, after the quick intro, let's focus on what's being undertaken in your company. Now, the audience today, both online and here, basically from companies or from government organizations, we are all under pressure and high expectations from the public as well as institutional investors, right? To tackle climate change, be it carbon reduction, climate adaptation, as well as the social economic impact to the overall society. It's just a matter of how far and how quick we are going to address them. Now, so let's focus more on, first of all, more on environmental and the social aspect. Now, Christina, you mentioned about the energy consumption from real estate sector, the buildings, both existing or the new projects. So how is net zero carbon and climate likely to affect your company? Could you give us a bit more examples of your approach to climate, on both mitigation and adaptation?
Yeah, I think to tackle the carbon net zero is also one of our major targets, and especially we are facing existing building, how to achieve and do better in terms of green and environment and energy saving. So I will take two examples. For example, our Three Garden Road, it's a 30-year-old office building, but yet we are able to obtain the first WELL certification. That this building is promoting health and safety in terms of air quality, in terms of wellness, to echo or to answer the question how an existing building can contribute to our targets. And also recently, we had just achieved the highest score in BEAM Plus recognitions. So this is especially on the energy saving and on the innovation part, we got the full mark. So we have put full force in trying to mitigate carbon emission, energy saving, management by using technology. And for example, we got a smart climate detector, okay, installed in our building, and then that collects the climate data, and that translate into our building control systems, that we can adjust our use of air conditioning, as well as giving us a significant saving in terms of electricity consumption. So we also install devices in automation to reduce the use of water, and then enabling our F&B tenants, though it's a small amount, to do food recycling and waste management. And also in terms of the tenants' engagement for the community, we work very hard on that. We got a program called Music de Colère. It was initiated in 2015. It was a program, musical performance program. We are nourishing the young talent, and that we provide a platform, a venue, and we structurally organized all these performances to enhance the wellness of our tenants, as well as promoting the well-being and development of youth in Hong Kong. So those are the initiatives that we use a building to demonstrate how we can participate in tackling all these challenges. And also in the Lanham Place Mall, we also is the first building to accredit, to got the EDGE. And also we got the BIM Plus recognition as well. So similar smart technology has been applied as well. So we achieved very good ratings in all those energy, waste, water, and also the tenant engagement part. So I think we proactively derive strategies and to tackle all these issues related to that.
Brilliant. What I just learned from Christina is not only stop from getting a BEAM or wellness standard, be it Platinum Gold, but Christina basically just pushed a little bit ahead, connecting the community and having some more stakeholder engagement with their talents, etc. So it's quite inspiring, and also a sample that we can learn. Just at the level of getting certification is not enough, right? This is a key message. Now, moving towards to Russell. Now, you are in you mentioned manufacturing industry in certain way. You're talking about detoxification, your products, etc. So could you share a little bit more, OneSource story on this aspect? You have some videos to show, is it? Yeah.
Sure. In our market research, we find that many young moms, particularly ladies and moms, are very interested in health and safety, particularly in their own family. Actually, I have a study case. Could you play a video, please?
Oh, cute baby. Did you know that there are products that could be harmful to your baby? Oh, you. Don't you just wish there's a magical app that tells you what your baby uses and eats is safe and healthy so you can put your mind at ease? Because there is. Okay, catch on. 1 is good, 10 is bad. Some so bad it causes cancer and the government bans it. What are you waiting for? Get your products and go!
Approximately 10 hours later.
Everything is perfectly safe for you. I don't know how I ever lived without OneSource.
Thank you.
Over to you. Please further elaborate a bit.
Well, this is just one studying case. We find that actually in the last 3 years, we find one customers has very high usage of our platform. And later on, when we communicate with that person, she revealed that she is a cancer patient, and she's been very, very concerned of the personal products that she's been using. So within 1 month, she used like a regular, 3 years of usage for regular users. So that's how it's being very vital to some of the sensitive groups, like people with health conditions. And we are very happy that our platform can do a little contribution to help people at ease when they consume products, whether it's food or for baby products or for adult products. There are many harmful substances in our products, unfortunately. And I'm very, very proud that many manufacturers, their R&D departments are working with us right now to refine their formulas, to improve their product formulas, and make it more safer to the consumers. And we are proud to be their quality governance, so to speak. And I would like to put additional information. For example, we just came through from a summer. A lot of people use sunscreen, for example. There are a lot of ingredients in the sunscreen actually are harmful to the ocean sea lives. And by using our platform, we can easily identify those so that they can use our app when they go shopping, or just like that lady, check out all the products that are in their household. They can screen out and help them to get healthier, at the same time send a message to the industry to do more, pay more attention to the environment and so on. So that's our way to propel the ESG movements, so to speak.
Great. Is the app free for use?
Yes, for consumers, yes,
consumers.
It is.
Okay, great. Okay, let's move on. Johnny, I think you are facing quite a lot of expectations in terms of fulfilling some sort of international ESG standards. And now, TCFD or SBTI basically are the standard frameworks that we need to follow on carbon disclosure and climate risk and opportunities disclosure. Now, there are more coming, or even the ISSB already announced the alignment with TCFD as well as more stringent requirements on carbon. So what's your view in terms of all these sort of international standards as well as some local requirements adopting this standard?
Yeah, exactly. I think if you were to talk to a lot of the investors nowadays, and not only investors, but also the millennials and the tenants, you will notice that there's an increasing demand from them, asking you not only financial information, not only on P&L, how much money you make, etc. But a lot of the time, when they come to us, they will say, the first thing they will say, oh, how many people are in your sustainability teams? What are your targets? What are your goals? So of course, that we're getting more and more questions coming from different type of investors. And at the same time, if you were to talk to the tenants, they will also ask the same question, oh, is your building, achieving platinum level of rating, or do you have, gold and above rating, and so on. So you can see that these are all the other requirements that they are looking for. And if you were to look into the IFC building where we are located, we have got a WELL label being stuck on the entrance. And also, if you were to look at our competitors' shopping malls and office building, they also have BREEAM Plus label. So the reason why we all do this is because everybody is asking it, and that's why we are doing it. And at the same time, you have a lot of ESG rating agencies, giving you a score, on how well you do relative to the others. And that's why we do pay, at Henderson Land, a lot of attention trying to satisfy, all the ESG rating agency agencies out there, but because there are so many of them, it's impossible to satisfy everyone. So at the initial stage, we just focus on the big ones, the international, well-recognized agencies to begin with. But in terms of reporting, again, on physical risk and transition risk, reporting is quite important. That's part of the requirement from the task force on climate-related financial disclosure. And when we look at if you were to look at our 2021 sustainability report, you see we have started to report on physical risk and transition risk. For example, what are the climate risks and opportunities? What are the financial impacts, relating to them, and what are the climate resilience strategies to, solve this problem? And at the same time, the questions that you're facing on the transition risk will be market risks, such as, there's increasing demand on transparency of what you're reporting. Technology side, people are expecting you to use more property technology to streamline the whole process, whether it is construction or whether it is property management. And in terms of policy, we have to be up to date with the policy and also make use of renewable energy, as much as we can. So these are all the demands coming from the investors, our customers, and our clients. And so that's why, earlier, in the middle of this year, we have already started working on SBTI, and we have indeed committed to do so back in October this year. So right now we are focusing on looking at emission-free, scope-3 emission, not only for our groups, but also our upstream suppliers and downstream customers. And even within the group, we have 4 companies held under Henderson Land. For the 2 subsidiaries, i.e. Mirror Group and Henderson Investment, we will just look at their scope 1 and 2 and scope 3 together. Whereas for our 2 associate companies, being Town Gas and also Hong Kong Ferries, their scope 1 and 2 becomes our scope 3. So if they do well in scope 1 and 2, that will help me to do my job as well. So as a group, we are all under the same leadership of the 2 chairman, Dr. Martin Lee and Dr. Peter Lee. So we are very focused in, very cautious as to how we address climate risk issues. As a group, we are all very focused and committed, and that's why we have started working on SBTI. Town Gas, we quite often talk to each other, and in fact, last month when they had the ESG conference, they also invited us to go along to advocate and communicate sustainability together. So I think what I want to achieve is going forward, work together with more partners and media and players and try to, educate and convince everyone to do the same thing.
I'm always impressed by Johnny and his colleague. Basically, every time when he shares with us how they have aligning, internal stakeholders, he mentioned from top down, and then your stakeholders, your subsidiaries, and this is, one thing I think the most difficult part. Let's go to the second round of this question because it's quite related to the challenges and the obstacles that we are now facing on pushing ESG. One key question, basically from top level or from, the I would say the shareholders or the board of directors, they're asking sort of the justification of ESG. Why do we need to further invest in it, and how can we justify whatever we are doing? Seems like, I quote, before we start the second round discussion, I quote from The Economist in October. There's an article, basically it's around ESG. It says, or sort of the heading, they ask a question: can profit-seeking companies really help save the planet? Now, this is sort of our second round discussion focus. Now, we are facing the challenge from our shareholders, and of course, we have another group like institutional investor. They're asking, from different angles. Now, going back, I think from a CEO perspective, Christina, as a CEO, could you share with the audience here some more examples how you align the interest within your corporate on sustainability, with different stakeholders, your internal staff, talents, or other stakeholders?
Yeah, let me answer the question on the first part, and then I will show a short video about that. I think in terms of the challenges we are facing, we are on the contrary. Indeed, investors, tenants, they are global organizations. They are looking, for your ESG achievement and how how well you are doing, instead of challenging the amount of money, the ROI you're spending. We are, in terms of the profit, we mainly, the source of income is our rent, okay? So by use more renewable energy, we invest in all sorts of energy saving devices. Indeed, we calculate ROI, and indeed it pay back well. In terms of several years, not only we are doing the good for the planet, but I think this effort had been recognized and also help us to raise our fund. For example, the sustainability linked notes, the refinancing, etc. I think that it's beneficial to us by carrying out forward and ongoing sustainability actions. So in terms of how we engage our staff, tenants, I think we had been, this is maybe the challenging part, I would say, because as people get involved, maybe on those technical part, the technical department will be more involved and will have more input. But how we get these environmental awareness into our daily life, that is one of our mission to convey this message, just like what Johnny had said. He had to bridge all these, the staff, the management, all the committee with community, tenants, etc. I think that is the most important part, that we use our full force and different angles to achieve different levels of sustainability and ESG. So I would like to share a short video of how do we engage our internal staff or our tenants or our communities.
So Russell, you share with us the apps and some rationale behind. Could you further explain your ESG engagement and sort of accomplishments, and along all the process, any difficulties and constraints from your perspective?
Sure. 5 years ago, when my son was 15 years old, and one night he watched a musical called Alexander Hamilton, and he came to me and asked me, "Dad, what sort of legacy you want to leave behind?" And I was stunned by that question, and even until today, I'm still asking myself every day what sort of mark I like to leave behind. And therefore, 3 years ago, I founded One Source company and gathered some doctors and chemists to form this company and make this platform, hopefully, to let every consumer to understand the safetiness of the consumable products that we are using. And for me is straightforward. It's something that we must do, and that we're referring to ESG. We have to make our life and our business sustainable. There's no question about it.
Something that struck Russell at some point in our life, and I think quite similar to us, why we commit to environmental protection or the wellness of society as a whole. Now, so going back to the point on investment, we are being asked, as I mentioned, the justification of investment and sort of the return. Now, some returns are intangible, I would say. So, Johnny, I'm sure that you can share a lot of stories behind the social value that you have been creating. So, can you share a little bit more on the social part of ESG that you have been addressing?
Yeah, I was going to say we have so many examples, and I'm just trying to think which one to pick. So maybe I'll pick 2 to 3 to go through today. Won't go through in details, but just briefly mention them. So I think if you look at ESG, E is very important, but at the same time, social side is also a very key area that Henderson Land has been focusing on. If you were to look at the number of underprivileged families that are waiting for public housing in Hong Kong, the queue is very long. So in order to address this shortage of supply in the housing market, so we have been partnering with the government, with the NGO to work on the transitional housing projects for years. I think the first one in Hong Kong was Nam Chang 220 that was completed, and then the largest one that we are working on, and the first phase and the second phase has been completed, is the Kong Ha Wai, the one in Yuen Long, which is the largest one in Hong Kong. We have 1,998 units in total, and we estimated over the time of the project, we can cater for 40,000 people, over this time period. And these are not the only 2 projects that we work on. We have ongoing ones, another one in Kam Tin and another one in Ao Tam Mei South. So you can see the way that we work on this project is quite innovative as well. Not only do we try to focus on the social issues, but at the same time trying to address the environmental issue by using modular integrated construction processes to minimize waste, to reduce noise, to quickly assemble, all these units together. And when you have to, dismantle them, it's going to be quite quick because we use the DFMA technology. So sometimes when we work on projects, we also think about the environmental side. So that's one key initiative that we have been working on. The second one, you may have noticed that last year in the Olympic Games, all the Hong Kong athletes have performed very well. And you may notice that starting from 2018, Henderson actually has a program for elite athletes in place, which is called the Henderson Commendation Scheme for Elite Athletes. So we provide cash rewards not only to the top three gold, silver, and bronze winners, but also the people who are in the top 8, whether individually or in teams. So in total, we have donated over 23 million Hong Kong dollars to promote health and wellness in the society. And finally, I may just give another one, which is relating to health and wellness for tenants and employees working in the building. So we have a building in North Point, the Harbour East. Apart from being a platinum-rated building, it is also the first building in Hong Kong to achieve China Healthy Label highest rating 3-star. So the idea was to provide tenants a green and healthy living style. So if you were to go to the podium level, you can see that there are some gym equipments for tenants to exercise. There's a hydroponic in place, and then you have a weather totem, which is a measurement of the wind speed, humidity, and the temperature. And tenants can use their mobile phone to access all this real-time weather data at the same time, which is quite advanced. And if they go back to the workplace in the office, they can actually use the mobile phone to operate some of the windows in the building. So as you can imagine, an increase in indoor air quality would definitely improve the productivity of employees, improve the wellness of the employee, and that's why we have been not only focusing on the environmental side, but at the same time, the health and wellness of the employees and the tenants are also quite key. And that's why on the social side, we will, implement one of our strategy, which is value for people, focusing on not only our staff, health and safety, health and wellness, but also our partners' health and safety as well.
Great. I couldn't count how many examples that Johnny just mentioned, but it's quite many. Quite inspiring. And now, I'm cautious of time, but before closing the panel discussion, and just to wrap up everyone's thoughts, well, we need to be always mindful what we have been doing and what gaps that we still could identify in our ESG journey. So if you need to suggest one more thing, just one, all right, on ESG that your company could further accomplish, what would it be? Christina.
I think what we are going to engage more, because over the past we have developed so many programs to engage our communities. I think it is the target for us is to do more engagement about our staff, because it is a collaborative effort that the sustainability, ESG should be at our DNA. So promoting staff enrichment, well-being, and also their involvement in pushing further our ESG goal, the participation of everybody. I think it's our goal in this mid-long term. So as ESG has been increasingly affecting us, so I think this may be our future goal, to engage more about our staff on participating in achieving our common ESG goal.
Great, so deeper and wider engagement. So Russell.
I really hope that I could incorporate the carbon footprint of a company, or even better yet, down to the product level, incorporate into our platform so that consumers can review their achievement, the ESG engagement, so that everyone can participate in this mega move, this positive influence to the whole society and the world.
Right, so I would call it a product ESG labeling. Right, okay, Johnny.
Yeah, I'm always very proud of working at Henderson Land, under the leadership of our two chairmen. The reason is because they are big supporter of, green and sustainabilities. And if you were to look at the project levels, the company over the years, have achieved many green labels and healthy labels. Probably we have the largest number of green accreditations in the private sector in Hong Kong. So some good news to share. Earlier this year, we won the Pioneer Award, which is the highest level of achievement in green building leadership by the Hong Kong Green Building Council. And subsequently, they put us forward for the APEC Award, which is organized by the World Green Building Council. And I just came back from Bali last week. The good news is we beat, Singapore and Australian finalists. They are well-known companies in the region to obtain the highest level achievement, which is the business leadership in sustainability for the APEC region. So I want to say very proud of Hong Kong, proud of Henderson Land, and we will continue to, communicate this sustainability message to everyone. So my next aim is, if there is a competition, a worldwide competition, we probably try to aim to win the world competition next time. Thank you.
Congratulations, Johnny. So I hope this conversation goes beyond this, how much, 40 minutes, right? And it's something that is discussed continuously. So thank you very much today, Christina, Russell, and Johnny, for this insightful conversation. And thank you all of you, your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the inspiring discussion on how ESG best practices is implemented in different sectors. Please remember gentlemen, next please welcome Mr. Albert Lau, Director and CEO, April Advanced Technology Limited, to share with us his speech on transformation to green hydrogen technology. Please give a warm round of applause to Mr. Lau.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today as a speaker. I'm co-founder and CEO of April Advanced Technology, and our company slogan is "Let's change the world together." Hopefully, after this talk or introduction of what we do, you will have the same feeling as I do. So what we have done is we have invented a new material, which is a porous silicon material. We're calling it Si+. The plus doesn't have any meaning to it. It's just a name. We believe that this has reinvented the wheel for the hydrogen economy. Well, before we jump into hydrogen, let's come back to what we are experiencing in the world present day. So diesel, one of the most used fossil fuels, is used everywhere. Even in Hong Kong, well, aside from transportation, we actually use quite a bit in our buildings. So one of the laws and regulations is that all the buildings will need to have a certain power of diesel gensets to support emergency usages. So that is called the backup generators. Backup generators are used worldwide, in most first-tier cities, as I've said, or even for Africa or Philippines or other nations across the globe where they don't have grid. And that accounts for a lot of carbon, because diesel, it's not much treatment of what is being emitted. And diesel cost turns into electricity. That means very expensive. All right. So, well, without going through the slides, the world is experiencing, or at least we are all discussing about the 1.5 degree scenario or 2.5 degree scenario, whatever that may be. Well, one of the easiest usages or transformation is let's put in more renewable resources or renewable farms like solar farms or wind farms, whether it's onshore or offshore. But the problem with the grid is it acts like a water pipe. You fill in as much water will need to be used at the same moment. So it needs to be in constant balance. That is actually one of the reasons why we cannot indefinitely increase in these renewable power generations. That brings us to the duck curve. Renewable energy is intermittent. So during the day you have sun, or when you have windy days you have wind. But what if the sun is down when you don't have wind? Then that actually will have to go back to our base load, which is mostly nuclear and thermal power plants. And that brings us to a duck curve. It's a real duck right there. So the whole thing is, with increased renewable energy generation, we will have a more and more, well, the deeper trough, because we have being in the overgeneration rate. We generate too much electricity such that these renewable energy resources cannot actually be transferred to the grid and then for us to use. And when the sun is down, the problem comes again, because, hey, the nuclear, the thermal power plants, they are on constant production. They cannot scale up to, I want double the power generation. They cannot do that. It's a pretty stable power generation systems. So when there's no sun, there's no light, or no wind, then people go back to home. Then there's a power surge. What comes into play? Diesel again. So we actually use a lot of diesel. Diesel gensets in cities, as I've said earlier, in all large cities, we have a lot of these backup diesel gensets, and all of them have specific maintenance schedules by law. So for example, in Hong Kong, it needs to run up to 10 or 15 hours per annum, even though it's only for backup. It's just for pure testing, making sure that it functions in cases of emergencies. And for that, it's not actually generating electricity. It is just burning carbon. And we're all talking about carbon. Why emit unnecessary carbon? Well, but then diesel is a guaranteed source of energy. So that is actually required because of safety reasons. So let's come back to what we're looking forward into is hydrogen. So hydrogen hype, we've all heard about it. It has been around for 10, 20 years. Everyone talks about it. But, well, we all know how it's made, how it's being used. Question is, how do we transfer it from the place where it's being made to the place where it's actually needed. That is the main bottleneck of the current hydrogen economy. And there are four main problems of hydrogen. First, storage. How do you store it? Second, how do you distribute it or transport it? Then comes safety. And lastly comes production cost. Production costs with every new technology that is usually the least of the concerns. Look back at our cellular phones when it was still a water bottle size 30 years ago. It cost roughly $3,000 US for one water bottle size telephone. But then people still buy it because it's needed. Or even with Tesla, when it first came out, yeah, costs, it can be done in many financial ways, where Elon Musk lost $20,000 per car initially, but then he's the richest man on earth right now. So production cost is usually the least of the concerns. So what have we done? What is Si+? So Si+ is a very porous material regardless of its particle size. As early as 2013, there has been papers publishing that nanosilicon material, as long as it has a huge surface area, it can generate hydrogen on demand with the basic solution. Well, the equations are written there. I don't want to go into chemistry here, but problem with nanoparticles, it's not scalable, it's extremely costly, and it's very hazardous. Causes health problems because you cannot package nanoparticles. It comes out of all the creaks and cracks, and then it gets into your lungs, and then it causes a lot of nightmares. Well, for our technology, it has we have applied back in 2016, so right now it has already been granted in major jurisdictions across the globe. Si+, so it's black powders. Volumetrically, it's huge. Well, of course, the hydrogen source comes from water, but if I only use our Si+, we pack it into a cubic meter. That stores the energy to generate 140 kilograms of hydrogen. So to give you a little bit more perspective, that translates to roughly 2 tons of solid-state hydrogen in a 20-foot container. That really depends on the road-going limits of different cities. Like Hong Kong, the road-going limit is 18.5 tons. Maximum payload of a 20-foot container is more like 25.6 or something along those lines. Do a simple math, 14 weight percent, that gives you the amount of solid-state hydrogen that you can carry. So you don't need to go back to the traditional, conventional wisdom of transporting hydrogen in pressurized tube trailers, which are extremely costly. And then, even if you can transport, even if you have the truck, well, you still cannot transport that hydrogen through bridges or tunnels because of obvious safety reasons. So for our the hydrogen generation, this is a very simple demonstration. Well, it's a simple stir, as we can all see. 25.6 is a thermocouple stuck to the outside of the floss, and then pure hydrogen generates because it's a chemical reaction. We don't generate any sort of gases that will poison the fuel cells. So, well, yeah, of course, we're going to cut up the clip. This whole reaction takes about 30 minutes. And, well, temperature keeps on rising itself. So we don't need to add in any sort of extra energy other than a simple stirring. And then we'll have pure hydrogen on demand. The whole system can function as low as -20 or actually even lower because of the sodium hydroxide that is playing the role. Sodium hydroxide solution at 28%, that solution freezes as low as -33 Celsius, which means this system can operate as long as the hydrogen source is in its liquid form to react with my Si+. So we have a larger operating window than diesel, which means in some specific cases, like back in last year or 2 years ago, for Texas or even back in Hokkaido and other snowy states, where it's too cold for diesel gensets to start, we become the guaranteed energy, even more guaranteed so than diesel. Well, since we're talking about ESG, I cannot skip but tell people about how green this whole thing is. So what's the carbon footprint? It sounds too good to be true. You generate hydrogen on demand, you solve all the problems of hydrogen economy. So these numbers have been prepared by one of the speakers yesterday. So he's a professor at City University of Hong Kong, School of Energy and Environment, Professor Sharat Chopra. So he prepared based on ISO protocols. We don't cut any sort of corners. we do cradle to gate. So we start with everything that we can possibly dump into making SI+, and then towards the usage of it. And then we include 1,000 kilometers by rail, delivery, 100 kilometers by truck, which means if we have a foundry somewhere in, or because I use a metallurgical means of producing my SI+, so if I have a foundry, let's say in Foshan or in Sichuan or somewhere else in China, ship it down to Hong Kong, yeah, that pretty much covers. But, well, even if it doesn't cover the transportation distances, this transportation footprint only accounts for roughly 2 to 3% of the final carbon footprint. So it's actually minimal. We include all the carbon footprint from the metallurgical grade silicon because that is our main feed-in material. We use fresh sodium hydroxide, we use tap water. We use power from the grid, and not cutting corners here. As I've said earlier, there are a lot of curtailment going on with solar, with wind, maybe up to 30 or even 40% at times. I'm not using curtailed electricity, I'm just using it straight from the grid. So I'm not cutting any corners here. And since I am going to compare this with power, with diesel, so I need to convert it into a unit that we all speak about, so which means kilowatt hours, electricity. I'm using 60% fuel cell efficiency here. Some may argue that, hey, it's slightly high. Well, I'm using PEM fuel cells. Right now, we're talking about 54 to 58%. Japanese fuel cells go above 60%. So 60% is more of the average or slash going forward will be a more conservative number. And, well, for my comparison, I'm using the best optimal conditions for diesel and natural gas. So as we all know, diesel gensets, even if it's being operated, at times it's operating idle. So it's just like a diesel generator or like a car stuck in a traffic jam. Still, the engine is still running, it's still burning fossil fuels, but yet it's not covering any mileage. That becomes infinite carbon footprint per liter of diesel because it's not even working. So I'm putting all that aside. Whatever it's being used, it generates electricity, and I only calculate that. So that's my comparison. So for my systems, so I only use Si+, I don't use any of the waste heat. I recover the sodium silicate as the byproduct, which is a very useful construction material. I only use that, and then it gives me 0.59 kg CO2e per kilowatt hour, as compared to, well, all the blue columns on the right. Well, I've actually gotten quite a few people ask me, so Albert, what if the world actually uses Si+ as the core energy provider? Then you'll make so much sodium silicate, you crush the market, then it's going to worth nothing. I'm like, don't worry. I can actually change that into calcium silicate. Calcium silicate is the exact chemical composition of current cement. So I'm calling it green cement because I'm not using the traditional clinker, the traditional burning, releasing the CO2 from production of cement. And once I turn into cement, that gives me the second column, 0.49. So it roughly dropped by 20%. And I don't believe anyone will say I'm producing too much green cement, especially that is being one of the hardest to abate sectors in the world. If I start to use the waste heat, well, just a refresher, we started off the floss clip. We started off roughly with 25.5 Celsius, and then we ended up 40 plus. If we keep on adding Si plus to the reaction batch, then the temperature keeps on rising. Oh, sorry. So if we start to use that waste heat, well, that waste heat can be used for dishwashing, commercial laundries, or even for in European countries like thermal aquifers, where they have a couple Olympic-sized swimming pools underneath the runways. Well, that's actually one of the examples in Germany, where they heat up the water during summer times and then in the winter times use that heat to prevent the runway from freezing. I mean, there's so much uses for this sort of low-grade heat, and that uses the most energy. Space heating, that's very simple. So what have we done already? So left side is a reactor, simple reactor. You source it from Alibaba, source it from any sort of reactor makers, and then they can make it for you. Well, that's a 150-liter reactor, and then we generate the hydrogen, directly pass it into fuel cell. We don't need any sort of gas separation because we generate pure hydrogen. Electricity generated goes into the power wall, which is lithium-ion batteries, and then the batteries will power up whatever load that is called upon, because fuel cells doesn't have power, unfortunately. When it has when it is a 1 kilowatt fuel cell, at most it can give you 1.3, 1.5 kilowatt of power. But for batteries, if you have 1 kilowatt hour of batteries, it can possibly give you 5 kilowatt of power for a minute or 30 seconds, whatever it is, depending on the chemistries and the battery management system of the battery pack. So this system is, as you can see, it's very simple. It's readily customizable, readily scalable. You put in larger reactors, you put in multiple reactors, larger stack of fuel cells, larger power wall, and then it becomes usage number one, SI plus genset. Solve a lot of the problems. You don't need diesel anymore, and yet you are still using green electricity or clean electricity. Yeah, green is a word that I try to stay away from because we have actual numbers. I don't need a qualitative word to describe how green my hydrogen is or how good my hydrogen is. I have an actual number. Why use a qualitative instead of I can use a direct quantitative number and say this is the carbon footprint of my hydrogen. So application scenarios of the genset. First, as I've said, let's replace the backup diesels. Why use it? Why burn unnecessary carbon on a monthly basis across the globe? Well, backup diesel when it's not being used, but yet it still needs to operate on a monthly basis, which means it has relative costs associated with it. So it becomes the levelized cost of electricity. Levelized cost of electricity for backup energy is actually very high. It's more about the maintenance and managing of the genset instead of the fuel cost. So yeah, let's take out backup diesels and put in the new, very low carbon hydrogen gensets. You don't store hydrogen, you store Si+, you store solid state material, you generate hydrogen on demand. The only hydrogen that is being stored within the whole system is within the pipes, from the reactor to the fuel cell, and that's all the hydrogen that you store. Once it goes through the fuel cell, it becomes pure water and electricity, so we don't touch upon any problem of storage and transportation of hydrogen. So yeah, or we can use for an uninterruptible power supply for data centers, or even, well, actually well, I got the note that I have 1 minute left. I think the more important thing is that this can bring economies of scale to the bigger hydrogen economy. We're all talking about how cheap hydrogen can be, but the other part is how cheap can fuel cells be. Fuel cells are extremely expensive right now because they don't have volume. But when we target the backup arena, in Hong Kong alone, I'm guessing, my best guess is that Hong Kong has 100,000 of these large or small diesel gensets. Replace them all, that's 100,000 worth of fuel cells for any fuel cell manufacturers. That gives the necessary volume, drive down costs, and then the whole hydrogen economy can then take shape. And with that, it wraps up the introduction of what I do at for Advanced Technology. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed to our next panel discussion about collective innovation with Greentech. So please first now welcome our moderator, Mr. Herbert Siu, Assistant Director, World Green Organization, on stage. Next, please, we would like to invite our panelists, Mr. Cyrus Chow, CEO, OneCharge, and Mr. Sam Ngan, Founder and CEO of Popsible and Chairperson, Association of Metaverse. Next, we have Mr. Stannis Poon, founder and chief scientist, Choi Lee Tech Limited. And last but not least, Mr. Alex Y, business development director, Link Charge LHC New Energy Company Limited. Welcome, and I'll pass the time to Mr. Steele to chair this panel discussion.
Hey, thank you. Please be seated. Hey, welcome. Good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we come to the last panel section of the conference. But last but not least, I'm sure this will be one of the most exciting ones because we want to talk about innovation and green tech. So we are honored to have invited Dennis, Sam, Cyrus, and Alex to come here to share their insights on their respective field. But before the conference starts, so I want to maybe briefly introduce a bit of the topics today. Cool. So today's topics is connective innovation with green tech. Next slide, please. So we talk about green tech all the time, but what is the definition of green tech? So green tech is very broad terms, and according to UN ESG, the definition of green technologies is, is having the potential to significantly improve environmental performance relative to other technologies. And the core sectors will have agriculture, energy, water and waste management, building, and transportation. So there are three goals for green tech. So one is to protect the environment, repair damage done to the environment in the past, conserve the Earth's natural resources. And we talk about green tech. So the first thing spring to our mind is innovation. So why does it need innovation, and what role should green tech play in the universe? So innovation is important in green tech because it gives higher probabilities of establishing a sustainable business that could lead to a more healthier planet, and also lead to accelerate planet Earth to reach carbon neutral more faster. So here I want to share a bit of example of green technology, green innovations around the globe, some interesting startup around the globe, and we can actually know what happens in the green tech environment. So first of all, is the Mill Textiles. So this one is the German firm. They have innovated the textile kind of manufacturing process. They could extract the elements called caseins in the milk to make the textiles here as smooth as silk. And this could reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and water wastage. And the second one is the Dutch company. They use one of the polyester to make the plant-based packaging, which could lower the environmental impact. The third one is interesting one, is a solar flower. Head office is based in Boston. So this solar panel doesn't need installation, so it's portable. You could actually bring it to install whatever you want. And there's 12 petals in the flowers, which will open up when the sun rises, and they will automatically close when the sun falls down. And the most amazing part is the petal will have the sun tracker system installed. So they will actually change the directions to the sunlight to optimize the solar radiation exposure to optimize the output. And sustainable phones, so somebody may have heard it about the Fair phone. So they actually use a low environmental impact procedures to compose the phone. And you could disintegrate into different parts, and then you could upgrade different parts to increase its longevity of the phone. And here is the plant board. It's a vertical build structures, and you could build all the greens and plants on it. And it have a self-irrigation system that could create a new habitat for insects, and also this could purify the air. Sunlight transport is a passive system. They could channel the sunlight into illuminate the light-deprived office room with zero energy consumption. And cool pavement, they could reduce urban heating by 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. And the hydrogen fuel cars is more green to compared to diesel and gasoline. And the best part for this is actually you can't own the car, so you can only subscribe the car, which could include all the maintenance, insurance, and hydrogen. And this could actually align more the interest of the supply chain so that the owners of the supply chain will have more interest to maintain the car and increase its longevity. So let's head to the panelists' questions, and maybe we could start with the panelists could maybe briefly describe yourself and your company so that we can know more about yourself.
I'm first. Hello everyone, I'm Dennis, founder of Charlie Tech Limited. We are graduate from Cyberport in year of 2020, and we're specializing on hydroponic technology for carbon capturing and microalgae related product.
Hi everyone, and thank you for the WGO for the opportunity to share what we are doing right now. I'm Sam An from Popsible. What we do is we use the blockchain technologies on how to do the ESG topics like social fundraising, and also how to doing a more measurable and traceable support on the green technology and green initiatives. And myself is I'm from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. I'm a very technical guy, and I'm also the founding chairman of the Association of Metaverse. We promote the Metaverse and Web 3.0 technology in Hong Kong. And I'm also the Cyberport Association, Alumni Association Vice Chairman. So we are in good relationship with the Cyberport startups on exploring how to leverage the blockchain technologies on to promoting and to create more innovative applications for the startup industry.
Hi, I'm Cyrus. My company is OneCharge, which is electric vehicle charging platform. So recently we launched with a car importer in Hong Kong with a widespread charging network. So we help to reduce the emission of the city, and then also bring zero emission driving experiences to Hong Kong drivers. And also thank you for the WGO inviting me to share the experience on green innovation.
Thank you. I'm Alex Hui, Business Development Director at LinkCharge. LinkCharge is headquartered here in Cyberport. It's an umbrella company of LHC New Energy, or more commonly known in the mainland as Ling Wuchong. Our mission is driving towards carbon neutrality. We focus in innovating for EV community by bringing a great experience, great user experience in green travel. Our in-house developed cloud platform integrates with smart EV charging to provide simple charging and management experience for private owners, retail fleets, and operators. Currently, we have over 4,000 charge points connected to our cloud platform, serving EV drivers in over 200 cities, including Hong Kong, mainland, particularly in Greater Bay Area, and we're currently expanding in UK. Since the launch of our solution back in 2017, we have managed to reduce the carbon footprint close to 500,000 metric tons.
Good, thank you. Thank you for your amazing introductions. So we hear like the 2 days of the conference, we talk a lot about like sustainability, ESGs, and all these kind of like elements, right? So being the like part of the green tech industry, it should be the leaders to bring the society forward to achieve the carbon neutrality, right? And then complete the missions. So I want to ask, like, what are the unique competencies and challenges that you face when you pursue the green tech?
Okay, I think with green tech or with any other new technology, it takes time and resources to develop, deploy, and in the end, hopefully there's demand to drive the growth. The challenge there is likely the time, because time is not on our side when we focus on climate change, and the clock is ticking. We believe in working together with partners, innovators, or stakeholders, or even our competitors, to work in a team to work towards this goal. And to give you an example, in our business direction is we provide EV charging service, but we not only provide install EV chargers or using our own network, but we also would like to invite and welcome other interested parties who wants to provide green tech services. So such as startups or even well-known companies who lack in the knowledge or experience in this field. So we help them to offload the heavy lifting in the development and deployment cycle. So for the demand, we are quite fortunate. Our company started when in the era where the EV demand and EV services are picking up, and especially in the last 2 years. So we're very fortunate there.
Maybe Sam?
Yeah, when we talk about green tech, and the most challenging part would be from the market, that how we can visualize to the market that you adopt the green technologies, what is the benefits, and how we can quantify what we can contribute. Like we are a kind of blockchain company, and lots of people think that blockchain is energy waste, and we have to quantize what we can bring along for what is our campaign and what we do. But I think, for example, like Popsicle, we make sure that we are one of the most energy-saving technology compared to all of the market participants. So, but how we can visualize the market we are actually the best solutions among all. Of course, when we are hosting an event, for example, physical events, or we are having EV or some charging piles everywhere, we have to make use of some of the leverage some of the resources. So how you compare the physical to right now on current day the solution to the new solutions? I think there's a processes that we have to do the transition and R&D. So that everything like solar energy, they will optimize when the technology they evolve to a particular stage. But not everything at its early stage, it would be the most energy optimized stage. So the first of all is how the market will they are more tolerate on the transaction period. We are presenting a new solutions, and one day this solution is a more energy safer, environment friendly solutions, and give more room to the new technology, new innovation in the market. And the second one, I think, the most challenging things we are encountering is that a lot of people, they may be the early adopter to the green technology, but why they hesitate? Because they are not having a more traceable and more measurable indicator for what they contribute involving to. So like Popsicle, we try to trace from the origin for everything that we initiate, and telling the people that cause everything on the blockchain. So from its origin to everyone involving, it's all publicly accessible, so that it gave a confidence to the market that what we did and what we did to contribute to which area. So that at one day, we hope that the market would give a lot more rooms that we think that it's great solutions, and that we can quantify and make everything that we do, environment protection, carbon reductions, social welfare supports, and they are being more publicly accessible, then we can support them at our utmost efforts and endeavor on that way.
Well, really well said, because like many green tech, at first as short term, it may not be really profitable, right? It doesn't look good on our eye, but then in long term, like I think like in the first few years, maybe it need more like for example, solar, it need more like government support, but then like in long term, it would bring us more cleaner energies and the price would be more competitive, right? So talking about green tech, so we all know that like technologies and innovations are inseparable, right? So I want to ask like what impact does technology have in like to bring us achieve like carbon neutrality or net zero? Could maybe like Dennis could maybe share a bit of the insight on that?
I think technology for carbon neutralization will basically talk about lowering the greenhouse gas emission and increasing the carbon capturing effectiveness. So my expertise is like capturing carbon. So let me focus on talking about this. So there's a number of carbon capturing technology in the market. They're really effective, but the problem is they cannot utilize the captured carbon for good use. Sometimes they just inject a rock and put it deep down in the ocean, but eventually will come in a century. So there is some carbon capturing technology that they even create more carbon footprint. So at this moment, we kind of have like it's a long way to have an actual technical advancement to truly have a feasible carbon capturing and utilization. This is what my aspect, yeah.
Yeah, as I mentioned, one of our company mission is in driving towards carbon neutrality. So we think technology does play a positive impact on reaching our goal. And as well, we ourselves integrate and support different types of technology to provide us EV charging services. So that definitely help us in reaching our goal. But one point I want to point out is companies should also look into the cost and benefit analysis when they decide on deploying green technology, because oftentimes they would support green just for the sake of going green, but they don't really realize if there is the actual benefit, if the benefit is more than the cost. So a good example is in the battery development field. You always hear a lot of breakthroughs in technology and in improving the range and having a faster charging time. But oftentimes those numbers are from the lab. So it's not really in production. And secondly, often if you really read into their technology, they oftentimes the raw material is, there are chances that are quite rare, or it requires a lot of resources to acquire them. So even though, yes, you get longer range and faster charging time, but you compromise on the benefits, where because of the cost is more than the benefit. That's what I'm. And of course, there's also debate. What we talked about before we got on stage about battery and fuel cell technology. I think there's no one solution, no one single solution to solve all problems. I think different technology would serve their purpose. And if you asked me a week ago, maybe fuel cell technology is maybe more suitable for commercial or commercial trucks or maybe airplanes, because it is much lighter compared to having packing a extensive battery with lots of weight. So, but if any of you have seen the delivery announcement earlier today with Tesla Semi, they actually have innovated that they can prove that battery technology can also serve for commercial use.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. So we were just talking about, before this channel, we just talked about hydrogen. So every technology has its pros and cons, right? And hydrogen, like, it seems that is a bit cleaner, but then they also have the cons as well, right? But because the efficiency to transfer hydrogen to energy, it needs to take some like electricity out as well. So everything have like the good and bad side. So I want to ask like Cyrus about like, because Hong Kong is famous for its finance, right? It's finance hub, and everyone talk about technologies, about fintech, right? Fintech is a sexy, and then the boards only care about bottom line, so fintech is actually the way to go. But what do you think, like, why should the company do more or focus more about green tech in the next decade?
So basically, Greentech is for sustainability, but financially for the company, if they're very focusing on green technology, they are kind of more sustainable in my point of view. So in my industry, you can see some car manufacturers, they are the pioneer of the EVs. They invented EV for many years, and now it comes out to be very popular in the market. So let's say Tesla or BMW, because they try to go ahead before some other competitors like Toyota. So people actually like it. So it also brings the company to be more sustainable in financially. So it fits. It's not just about the image of the company, but actually helps the company to sustain for longer time. So like sexy car models brings customers. They have more income, and then they can use more green technology in the next model. So bringing better products to the customers, as well as they can bring the better financial statements to their shareholders as well. And for the corporate image side, so when you use sustainable materials in the products, so like the cars, it actually brings the new experiences to the customers. So like BMW, they use some recycled fabrics in the high-end cars, and which actually brings better touch and feel for the car itself, and also makes customer feel, I'm supporting the things good for the environment. So I think the company should focusing on the new technologies brings the innovation to their products itself, and then also makes people have the awareness to use the environmental friendly products as well.
How about Sam? Like why should companies you think maybe focus more on green technology?
I think this question is not about the financial or technology level. I will put it in this way, I think it's more on human level. Techno humanity is kind of like when we are pushing the whole social community to evolve and to being more advanced, like someday we have the horsepower for the transportations, and right now we have envision one day that we go to the Mars and we implant right there. And that, and as well, like for the green tech industry, for all startups and innovations and all pioneers, I think the market, we should give them more support on the first initiatives, and how they can, so that they can have more real life applications for the end users to experience what is the innovations, what they can bring to us. And that it's a positive circle that we can give more resources back to the innovation initiator, the startups, so they can move on to advance a better technology. So I think if companies or the market participants, we have the room to select from which is the technology, which one the things like the material or the processes is more green, and we support this green initiative rather than just considered on the ROI as mentioned by Herbert. like rather it is some hesitations on the technology maturity, but we give more initiatives to push forward the whole things, whole technology innovations, and give them a room to grow. And that would be, I think, why the market should support the green tech or green tech industry suppliers more on what they are encountering when during their business engagement.
So I want to ask about like being one of the like member in the green technology field. So what are the potential and latest trends in like of green technologies in the next decade? What do you think it will be?
I think for the next decade, the mobility will be one of the very important sector. So EV is now changing quickly. So I'm in the industry, so I'm more into that. From private transport to the public one, electric vehicles and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are growing rapidly in last few years. But I think the change will go on for at least 10 to 20 years as well, because there is a lot of rooms for many areas to explore. So like Southeast Asia is expanding quickly, and we have some clients there, and then they're very keen into changing the very old-fashioned buses into electric one or the private cars. So that will be one of that. And also for the charging technologies, traditionally, charging station is just connecting to the grid, getting the energy from there. So there's always a question from people like, okay, where do you generate your electricity? Is it from coal, from gas, or from any fossil fuels to generate? So now it becomes like a very comprehensive package from the solar panels, wind turbines, and I think from the next decade, there will be more efficient solar panels, transforming the sunlight into electricity, and then recycling the battery from the used electric cars to store it. And then when people drive their car and then they charge it, it becomes an ecosystem of entire EV charging and mobility solution.
For me, I think carbon capturing will be the trend for the next decade. Of course, there's numbers of like low greenhouse gas emission production, just like 3 of the panelists was doing. And for carbon capturing technology, there's no like really truly feasible technology in the market that like, oh, it's really carbon neutral, carbon negative. There's none. So I think the world scientists and engineers, including myself, are working on it. So once they did it or we did it, then carbon capturing for carbon credit will become one of the largest industry in the next decade. Yeah.
Cool, well said. So because we have some time, so maybe do you guys maybe want to have some key message maybe to wrap up the panel today, like about like the innovation with Greentech?
Well, I guess for us, as I said, we want a lot more people to play a role in working towards carbon neutrality, and our company would welcome anyone who would join into our mission in supporting that role. So yeah, so and if anyone in the audience want to experience our Greentech technology and services, we have a few charging stations here in Cyberport in phase 2 and phase 3. So you're more than welcome to come to charge up.
So yeah, for the technology innovation, so mostly in Hong Kong market, so there is a very big difficulty. So people usually stand alone their system, so they don't want to share any of data, any of the thing to connect together. So like the charging station, we have a lot of competitors in the market, and they never share, so you don't know what is going on in their charging station. But like in China or Korea, they just connect everything together. So actually this thing helps to reduce a lot of time wasting for the customer to find charging stations, actually help people go green, and also make your charging station more efficient. It somehow is kind of environmental friendly action, because when you connect the things, you can deploy your system into other places that can be profitable for you as well. And you don't need to duplicate a lot of charging stations because it's just competing with another competitors. So sharing is kind of environmental friendly, and is a way to use the technology properly.
I once recorded that I saw a game that there's a clock for doomsday of the Earth, and that's if that's a great platform for WGO that we can encourage lots of people in the market on the earth that like when we are pursuing on the financial achievements on what the business that would like to do, we could like putting some resources to how to preserve our environment and how to contribute on how to make the things that the world's making better ones. Because it's not anything blindfolded. It exists, wherever what we regarding those things, it's just environmental friendly or not things. So the green topic, I think it's an urgent topic that we should give a highest priority for every business that running today right now. And for us, like even we are a startup, Popsible is promoting the green and the social service at our way. Like we are assisting the every like the green organizations and the social organization that we are making the like fundraising or the everything that we do on the Greentech, and we make it traceable, we make it more gamified and more fun, so that the market can spread the idea that why the green, which organization is doing whatever anything that is on the social part, on the environmental part, that is contributing to making a better world. So that I think that's a great platform that we should give more priority to the green topics right now.
Yeah, I think like people like us, we need some more opportunity to expose ourselves and tell the society what we're doing, why December right now is still really hot because of the greenhouse gas. So maybe the government can advocate, maybe Cyberport can advocate these things a little bit more. Maybe we'll do a seminar or talk in secondary school, even university. That would help, yeah, because they might not know, but let's say we give them 5 minutes of, hey, greenhouse gas is really affecting ourselves. It's really hot. You feel it. So this is a message we have to pass it to the next generation. Right?
Yeah, I definitely agree. So education is very important, and I think like early support from government would help a lot too to push the green tech to be more like widespread, right? So I think time is running up. So thanks again for the fellow panelists to share their view on this like innovation and green tech topics. We are actually learning a lot from you guys, and I will pass the time back to Natalie, perhaps.
Thank you very much for the very fruitful discussion. And may I also invite also like to invite Dr. William Yu, founder and CEO, World Green Organization, to come up on stage and share with us on the greenwashing and climate washing litigation. Please welcome Dr. Yu on stage with a warm round of applause.
Good afternoon, maybe good evening. I know it's a Friday afternoon. Before you leave for your happy hour, to stay here to listen to my presentation, because this topic, greenwashing, climate washing, really matter nowadays. So a little bit myself, I don't want to be long-winded, and today I would like to talk about, the climate washing. So it's a new term to you, maybe. Why this happened? Definitely, we know now we have 137 countries, have announced to achieve carbon neutrality. But 98% of the countries set 2050 as the target year. So you will see a lots of different policies, renewable energies, commitment, the net zero targets, and also, the previous section talking about the EV, the electric vehicles, all these targets come out. Now we have so many policy, so many net zero targets. So you will see, because of this, it become a very fashionable, I would say, hopefully it's not a slogan, but a real commitment to combat climate change. But some of the accusation would be, we all make a long years, quite remote from now. By 2050, we all want to achieve a target, to achieve something. But the scholar, they use a statement to describe this phenomenon: burn now, pay later. We all can, say it loud, this slogan: we all achieve net zero, carbon neutral. But by many, many years later. So now it becomes hopefully not a buzzword, but a terminology, a very fashionable terms: climate neutral, carbon neutral, net zero. We all want to go for that. Unfortunately, all these advertising campaigns start to use this kind of emission reduction commitment, in their advertising message. So we will see lots of I would say, environmental credential, environmental claims in all the marketing campaign. Especially they use color, changing to green color, to leave you an impression they are all green, they are all very environmental friendly. Be careful. We need to know the content, and we need to know the substantiated claims with evidence. Okay, let me show you a short video.
We know it's going to take many forms of energy to meet the world's needs while creating a cleaner future for all. At Chevron, we're lowering the carbon emissions intensity of our operations, investing in lower carbon technologies, and exploring renewable fuels of the future. We work hard to care for the homes we love, but it's only human to protect the one we share.
So that is a very famous advertisement. So according to the third-party analysis, it's not said by me, okay? But after doing some research, some comments from Current Earth, NPR, and Bloomberg coverage is a kind of classical greenwashing example. So as you can see, the advertisements strongly emphasize the company's green credentials and action to reduce the environmental impact. Its central message is, I repeat what they said, we are lowering the carbon emissions intensity of our operations, investing in low carbon technologies, and exploring renewable fuels of the future. So, are the company going to lower their carbon emissions? How about the effort to reduce carbon footprint? But when you look at their capital expenditure, you will see the effort, the spending in cutting down the footprint is very minimal. Their overall contribution to the greenhouse gas, the global greenhouse gas emission, is predicted to rise. So we would say the climate-friendly emphasis in this advertisement is grossly disproportionate. Some material information is not disclosed. For example, the scale of their ongoing investment into climate-harming fossil fuel extraction. So 97% of their annual spending plan to 2028 will lead to an absolute increase in carbon emission. So this company, kind of emission really affect our climate and also different communities across the world. But you will see in their advertisement, there are black, brown, local people, lower wealth communities shown in the screen, okay? So, and on the other hand, some acts, I would say, to discredit is they dump more than 16 billion gallons of toxic waste into Ecuadorian Amazon. Okay, and that threatened the health of the local people, of those people living in that area. So, yes, that's, we can see the classical example. The importance is not what you have said. The important is the evidence to substantiate what you have claimed. That's very important. So you need to do a checklist, to prepare a checklist to see whether the claim is justified, with all this evidence. So another example is about the advertising campaign or all this research about the environmental message, environmental claim, on the website. So some research has been done. As you can see, based on this research result, a significant number of misleading claims, on the website. So either they are false, deceptive, exaggerated, and could never qualify as a fair commercial practice. So under EU regulations, that would be an unfair commercial practice. Using a very vague general statement, and actually, even people want to search for the evidence, it's hardly, to find any sufficient information available in the public domain. So that would be a big problem. So what is greenwashing? I talked a lot about. So as you can see, it's generally defined as unsubstantiated or misleading claims regarding an actor's environmental performance. So they selectively disclose some of the positive environmental or social impacts of the company's business practice, but without complete disclosure of negative impacts. Okay, so they try to do all this marketing to appeal to consumer demands while making all these misleading environmental claims. BSR has classified 4 types of, kind of greenwashing. All this greenwashing means they trying to selectively disclose some of the type of information. So who are they? The misguided greenwash. They are unable to communicate the effort they spend to improve the environmental performance of their products or process. They cannot communicate effectively. So that is some kind of misguide and making a sweeping generation in their camps to sound like very environmental friendly. Okay, for the unsubstantiated greenwash, they have done something. However, after a deeper dive, you will see the company does not deserve as much credit as it seems. So I think instead of putting many resources to communicate, to do marketing, why you don't spend resources to do the actual work to improve the environment? Greenwash noise, definitely they will claim we are green, but does not have much to back up this claim. So it's not very, the message are not compelling to consumer. So when you do the assessment throughout the value chain, you will see the environmental strategy, the communication, they need some kind of improvement. But at least they are moving to the right direction, then they can help to communicate effectively. So for the effective environmental communication, we all expect the claims all align with the real efforts and across the different functions within the company. They can communicate effectively with their consumers, really understand the impacts, really understand the business direction. I think that's very important. So my advice to the company is you need to understand the biggest impacts of your product. Be transparent in your communication. Okay, and also when you want to justify your claims, try to find independent verification. Avoid making all these claims in a vacuum, okay? So, and okay, also engage your customer. And I think that's very important, and make good use of the technology to change, the old practice and trying to win the customer's confidence. So I won't be able to walk you through all these new regulations with an aim to prevent greenwashing from the EU taxonomy, to different types of advertising standard, some global initiatives, IOSCO, IMF, SEC, and even in Hong Kong, the SFC, they have issued different types of guidelines, helping us to understand the definition. So in short, I would say for climate washing is similar to greenwashing, but that involves sometimes different actors, including non-governmental, commercial, and even the target could be government. So how to avoid all these ambiguous claims, how to, as we deep dive, we will see the company try to obscure some important information. But we need to further evaluate, all these claims, all these ads, whether they really make a contribution to the environment. So greenwashing or climate washing, especially the climate washing related litigation, is going up. You can see in this 6 years, over 1,000 cases, legal cases, happen around the world. Mainly in Europe, in the US, New Zealand, and not many in Asia. And, in all these court cases, different types of regulations and laws are used. So you can see the variety. And interestingly, in Europe, they trying to use the human rights, the breach of human rights, as a kind of legal action brought against the companies or even government. One classical case is an oil company. They claim they will provide clean energy, natural gas as clean energy, and they want to achieve net zero emissions by 2040. So it's quite common, especially in Hong Kong. You can find any type of this kind of statement in the annual report of a company. However, they are sued. A kind of misrepresentation. You will see even they claim natural gas as a clean energy is problematic. We all know, compared to coal-fired, natural gas emits 50% less compared to that of CO2, the coal-fire in terms of the carbon emissions. But whether we can say it's a clean fuel or clean energy, and another argument is their undisclosed assumption about how to, again, to support their claim, net zero. Do they have plan? Do they have technology in place to support their claim? Another case is that went to the Supreme Court, and the Netherlands government lost the case. As a result, they need to close down 2 coal-fired plants in order to achieve 25% reduction. Using the baseline of 1990. So again, this law case, the basis is to use human rights. Maybe sometimes it's hard for Asian countries to understand the breach of human rights. So the government didn't provide sufficient protection to the citizens against the threats of climate change. So they try to use this as a kind of basis to sue the government. So I think it's not easy, especially how we can articulate the climate impact or the disaster, all these consequences to the ad of a company, right? It's because climate change, all these greenhouse gas went to the atmosphere. How we can proportionately or scientifically allocate all these cause and effect, impact to the damage or to, the impact of climate change is not easy. So the harm done by a company, how we can relate that to, climate disaster is not easy to quantify. But as you can see, now there is a trend. They trying to, have to bring all this litigation law case against the companies when they make the environmental claim. So I think it's a good alarm for the companies when they need to treat the net zero commitment, not a marketing campaign, not a marketing gimmick. Carefully using your slogan and carefully study the justification and evidence behind. I think that's very important, instead of making it a very fashionable marketing campaign. So to summarize, that's the worldwide phenomenon that different types of regulations and laws will be used to block against all this greenwashing and climate washing disclosure. So failure to disclose the climate risk might hurt the investor interest. And also in European countries, how to recognize the corporate human rights responsibility. That is another approach. So your claim, your projects will be challenged. So hopefully we can do something to bridge the gap, to empower ourselves on the related knowledge. Sometimes it's because of the recent lacking of knowledge of the senior management. So we need to remind ourselves to be truthful and accurate when we make all these business claims. Be clear to avoid any unambiguous statement. Try not to hide important information. Now things will become very transparent. Make fair comparison. And also, as discussed in the previous panel discussion, the life cycle, the full life cycle, assessment is important. And finally, remember, substantiate your claims with evidence. Very important, not merely a slogan or a marketing campaign. Otherwise, you might face legal action. Okay, so that's all for my today's presentation. Hopefully, we can work together to help the planet, bringing down our carbon emissions, and really to engage our consumers to act together. Thank you.